Good afternoon, everyone. It's Tuesday, June 4th, and the time is 1 o'clock. And the Board of Ada County Commissioners are in session for the department budget presentations. And we have Commissioner Laciando with us. Commissioner Visser is absent today. Also sitting at the podium with us is Phil McGrain, who has been the MC of these proceedings and helping us navigate the process. It looks like we've got four different groups up this afternoon. So Phil, I'll turn it over to you and you can let the audience know what's in store for them.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a reminder, everybody in the audience, we are streaming live right now. This afternoon, we will be hearing from the Emergency Medical Services District. Commissioners, this is just a reminder, this is one of those separate taxing districts that you sit as the board of. So throughout the budget, you'll see us bring this up because we'll hold separate votes for EMS. We'll be followed by our Ada County Public Defender. We'll have a break, then followed by the Clerk's office, as well as the Department of Administration and the Commissioner's budgets. I don't have any other information at this time. I'll turn it over to Kathleen if you're prepared for Darby and EMS.
Come on up. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Emergency Medical Services, or EMS, also known as the Ada County Paramedics, or ACP, is headed by Director Darby Weston and is the sole provider of 911 emergency medical services for the citizens of Boise, Garden City, Meridian, Eagle, Star, and rural Ada County. ACP assists CUNA with second-in coverage. Along with the Ada County City Emergency Services System, or ACCESS, partners of Boise, Meridian, Eagle, Star, and CUNA fire departments, ACP provides 24/7 advanced life support through its operation of 14 paramedic stations strategically placed in Ada County. Before you is the EMS budget. As Phil had mentioned, they are a special taxing district with their own 3% increase on property tax. Budget submitted for FY20, $18,990,566, an increase of $452,442. Operating budget of $5,690,695. Personnel budget of $13,299,871. This budget does include supplemental requests of $623,976, and as below, there's nothing in personnel that is a supplemental. It's all the cardiac monitors, and they will be using their fund balance to support that expense. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Darby to give you more information on his budget.
Welcome, Darby.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman.
Hey, Darby, real quick. Can you pull the microphone towards you? I'm told that people online can't hear. Thanks.
Is that better? Can we hear me now? All right, Commissioner Laciando, good morning, or good afternoon. Ada County Paramedics has been in business since 1975, providing services to the citizens of Ada County and the citizens of all the cities that we serve. We are very proud of the service that we provide, and we are very proud of the way in which we have worked with all of the agencies in the public safety arena to provide that service collaboratively and collectively. And so with that, I will give you a brief overview of the department, what we've accomplished, some of the issues that we're looking at going forward into the future, and some of the needs we have for this upcoming fiscal year. Ada County Paramedics is made up of 153 employees, 134 of which are licensed by the state to provide emergency medical services. 31 of our personnel are in administration, which accounts for administration, education, logistics, fleet management and maintenance, and education, as well as QA/QI. The rest of our employees are all field operations, providing services directly to the community that we serve. We have 14 stations strategically located throughout Ada County. 7 of those stations are built and owned by the EMS district. 3 of those stations are co-locations that we share with Boise Fire Department in locations where we would be building stations literally on top of one another. Instead of doing that, it made much more sense to maximize the use out of the resources that were there. And then we have 4 stations that are provided through cooperative agreements with the hospitals. within the district. 10 of those stations operate 24 hours a day. To lay a basic grid of coverage over the populous areas of the county so that we can respond in a timely manner to the next emergency call. We have one station that actually has a dual response out of it. There's a 24-hour unit. There's also a 12-hour unit, and that station sits up by St. Alphonsus, which is right on the edge of one of our busiest areas of the county. And so that's simply demand level coverage for the daytime hours. And then we have 3 stations that come up at varying times during the day to supplement the number of units available on the street based on the increasing demands that we see during that time period. Ada County Paramedics is planned out and built a little differently than fire services. The difference in our structure is that we plan and build facilities based on the demand for services. Whereas the fire department builds facilities based on the geography of rooftops. And so as we have built this system out, working collaboratively with the fire services, gives us a lot of points of origin to be able to respond quickly to an emergency call. The map that you see in front of you shows the density of calls that we receive within Ada County. And so as you look at the core of downtown Boise, you see an ultra-high density. That is in the range of 2,500 to 5,000 calls per square mile occurring in the darkest of densities. When you get out towards Meridian, you see most of that in the 250 to 500 density. There's a few pockets where it could go upwards towards 1,000 calls. And then as you get out in rural Ada County, it's less than 100 calls per square mile when we get out there.
Madam Chair, Darby, just to tie this all together for the folks who may be watching or attending this, very early in our budget presentations, we had a presentation from Meg Leatherman in Development Services, and really one of our decision points as we head into deliberations is going to be whether we invest finances in supporting the development of a regional plan. And I think that your department is really indicative of how important that's going to be for us for a long-term financial perspective. Would you share with the group what your general response time is in an incorporated city versus more far-flung communities, such as a planned community?
So our average response time will be in the 5 to 6 minute range, depending on where you're at. Our target as a department is to provide a 9-minute response time with 90% response performance. So 9 out of 10 responses for high acuity calls, we target hitting that 9-minute mark. Now currently we do that or very close to it throughout all of the cities within Ada County. Not quite as high in Star, hitting 90%. There's one unit out there. Busy probability says that more than once out of 10 times it's going to get tagged. So that one goes up 2 or 3 minutes. Eagle, because of the way that their city limits is now grabbing so much rural area, that one's a little higher, but Meridian is fairly solid on that number. Boise City is solid, Garden City is solid. When we get to disparate development away from the core services, we don't respond in the same period of time. We don't have the resources to be able to do that.
Can you give us an average response time to our planned communities?
So
Atmore,
when we
for
look
example.
at Hidden Springs, we're around the 12-minute mark at the 90th percentile. We can get in there 10, 11 minutes if everything's just right. 12 to 14 minutes if we're bringing in a second in unit for that area. With Avamore in that area, very similar time. It's a little bit quicker to get there because the whole thing's highway, or most of it. But still same same ballpark, 11, 12 minutes is what we would expect. I looked through the data on that. We had some times that were 25 and 35 minutes. But those times ended up being off trail above Avamore, where we had a hike in to actually get to the scene. So those are fairly good times, but it is a gap of 4 to 5 minutes over what we are targeting for best outcomes.
Thank you.
And, you know, one of the things that directly impacts the cost of the system is this overlay grid to provide coverage where people live. It, you know, roughly takes between 10 and 15,000 rooftops to fund the demand of another ambulance. And so when we get pockets of homes and there's 200 or 300 homes out there, that doesn't come anywhere close to funding what it takes to provide that resource.
Darby, when you say fund an ambulance, what about the cost for the station and everything that goes into that?
What we're looking for primarily, you know, we plan ahead to save capital because we know we've got stations that we're going to build in the future. We need to have resources available to do that. Station goes in, it's going to cost us about $1 million to $1.2 million to build a new station, get the facility up and running. Then it's going to cost us $650,000 a year to run it. And so at the end of the day, the station was the cheap part. The personnel to make it happen is where it gets expensive.
Madam Chair, Darby, I don't want to say this incorrectly, so help me remember something. If I recall, we have a station out by Star, but essentially we're not yet at that 10 to 15,000 level, so that's being subsidized by other citizens throughout the county and those rooftops. Am I?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, Star as a community is beginning to approach the area where the demand for service out there locally is going to start sustaining that unit, but it hasn't reached there yet.
Okay. So I guess I want to make clear, I don't see this, you guys do a fantastic job. I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders of development and the relationships that we are building and hope to continue to build with our fellow elected officials to really bring to light these costs that sort of go unnoticed sometimes because we have different agencies planning different things, and that's something that we hope to be able to do going forward.
Yes, and we certainly appreciate that. It is, you know, the more compact the population, the more cost-efficient provision of emergency services is. Because we can reach the whole population with a lower number of resources. And so then it's just, okay, what is the demand, and busy probabilities come into how many resources we need. As we start to spread the population out and it gets thinner and thinner, there's still people that we're going to need to reach, but either we can't reach them in a time that we believe is appropriate for critical emergencies, or it's done at a cost that is difficult for the community to support. And so we try and balance that as best we can as an agency.
Thank you.
As we look forward to the next slide, growth seems to be a thing in Ada County. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Our volume has averaged out about 4% a year increase. And so every other year, typically, we will add resources to maintain pace with the number of units available and the demands on the system. The map next to that really shows you what we are seeing as far as where the growth is occurring. We see a lot of growth in the west part of Ada County, specifically Northwest Meridian is a high growth area, but it's still at a low demand. And so we're seeing significant development in that area and an increase in the number of calls for service, but it has not yet hit a point where we need to look at adding additional resources out there.
So Darby, just for clarification on the FY 2000 You've got 2109, it's 2019, correct?
Yes.
And it's, the 20,000 is just year-to-date?
Yes.
So what are your projections then for the full fiscal year?
We expect it to come in north of 31,000 calls
North of
this year.
31?
Yeah. We were over 30,000 calls last year. We'll end up somewhere just over 31,000 for this year. Right now, it's tracking up 1.6% over where it was year-to-date last year at this point. We'll see where it winds out. You know, there's noise up and down as far as how much each individual year comes in, but over time, that 4 to 5% has been a pretty consistent number as far as growth goes for us. And so as we look at this, this allows us that ability to forecast out with some degree of good lead time. Here's where the houses are going in. Here's the call demand. We see it shifting. We know at this point in the game, we're going to have to put another station in this particular location. So the ones we're looking now is the very west edge of Meridian, northwest Boise, and east Boise. East Boise is probably the highest on the list at this point. Southwest Boise is starting to grow fairly rapidly, and there's a lot of high-density housing that is going to go in there. The nature of the development also plays into how often EMS is utilized. And so apartments tend to have higher utilization than single-family homes. Large single-family homes have a lower utilization than small. And it's just the socioeconomic nature of the subdivisions leads into whether it's high or low use for EMS resources.
Darby, I'm assuming you're tracking this by permitting requests, or?
Our
how are you
most
tracking?
sensitive, because it's interesting, you build a new subdivision, you would think you would have an immediate demand. And our experience is that you don't. When that subdivision has aged 5 to 10 years, you have a normal demand in it. The first 5 years, it's generally younger families coming in, especially even in the low-end subdivision, young, healthy family building a starter home, very low utilization. As you get some churn after a few years, the population normalizes to the rest of the community. We see a normal workload coming out of that. And so there's a long lead time between when the permits are cut and building actually happens, and when we start seeing utilization where now it's time to put the resource out there. Excuse me. Kathleen spoke a little bit about access, and I wanted to talk a little further about that. Access is a collaboration of Ada County paramedics, Boise Fire Department, Eagle Fire Department, Kuna Fire Department, Meridian Fire Department, and Star Fire Department. We work collaboratively on the deployment of EMS. We work collaboratively on the system development, how it's going to work, what we're going to do. We provide, as a group, tiered response deployment. What that means is on most of the calls that are run, you will not only see an ambulance, you will also see a fire truck responding to those. Some of the fire departments are actively looking at which kind of fire truck you ought to see responding to those, looking at alternate vehicles as a cost measure. But the advantage that brings to us is twofold. Number one, it gives us enough hands on the scene to be very efficient in a medical emergency. If you only have 2 people showing up in an ambulance, then those 2 people have to get all the equipment in, get the patient taken care of, get the gurney in, get the patient loaded, get the patient into the ambulance, off to the hospital. There's a lot of interruption of service with just 2 people. When we have the dual response, we have enough resources on scene that there are people able to treat the patient, get the needed equipment, prepare the patient for transport, and facilitate all of that in a very timely manner. So with our tiered response, we actually have 38 points of response origin. Between all of the fire and all of the EMS stations within Ada County, We have many points at which a response will originate, which gives us a higher percentage ability to hit the low response times in a critical emergency. We utilize cost sharing with the medical directors, with one of our QA positions and one of our educator positions. Those costs, we have developed a formula for sharing the costs across all of the organizations. All of those positions are funded through our budget, but we receive monies from all of the organizations to assist in the funding of those positions. As I said, we have shared facilities where effective, both for deployment as well as for training and education. Some of the training and education happens at our Benjamin facility. Some of it happens at the new Boise Fire facility that they just opened up. Some of it happens in Meridian. Moving it around, even within a single block training, offering it at different locations allows us to capture units from different areas of the county without pulling those resources too far out of the community that they serve. We have standardization of equipment and protocols so that all of the equipment and all of the expectations of every provider on scene are identical. Someone doesn't get cross messages with, I'm supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. Everyone has exactly the same sheet of music to play from. So it allows us to streamline the care, and it also allows us to work together efficiently. Currently, we are in the RFP process for cardiac monitors, which are one of the asks in this budget. It is time that we replace our monitors due to end of life. And what we have done is collaborate as a system so that not only are we going to replace our equipment, but all of the agencies are going to replace their equipment off this same purchase. Again, so that we align, so the same cardiac monitor that is on engine 3 is the same monitor in the back of the ambulance, is the same monitor on a fire truck out in Star. Doesn't matter who shows up, doesn't matter who gets what. The equipment that the crews are working with is identical. And so it allows us to give the best care to the patient, have the familiarity, decrease errors and risk as we go through it this way.
So Darby, for clarification on the cardiac monitors, is the $623,976, is that just our portion, or is that the other groups and we're purchasing for them and then they will reimburse us?
We expect our portion to be about $1 million. That is simply the supplemental portion of the budget that was increased from last year to cover that cost.
But that didn't answer my question.
That is strictly for covering what we need as a
Our
department.
portion.
Each one of the agencies has budgeted monies to replace their own equipment. The key to the process was that we will all replace with exactly the same equipment. We'll be able to share data back and forth, collect data, evaluate it, all within a single platform.
Okay, so during the procurement process, it'll be together, combined.
Yeah,
But
we will buy it, and the RFP has been structured so that all of them can buy off the RFP that we've completed.
Great.
We also have all of the agencies represented in the evaluation process of the RFP so that they're all included in the decision-making of which is the right device for us to buy.
And then just another quick clarification on the positions that were cost-sharing, medical directors, QA, and education, or educator. So in your budget for your B budget personnel, are those cost sharings reflected in this? You said that they reimburse us. So walk us through this. Is this the full amount and then they're reimbursing us?
So the medical directors, we pay more than the other agencies because being a transport agency, we have a higher utilization of the medical directors. I believe, and Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, what portion Access pays?
I don't have an exact, I can tell you what each one of them pays for each position.
I don't need to know the exact amount. I'm just asking for our budgetary purposes.
With the educators and the QA position, we pay for about 1/3 of each of those. The rest of the agencies pay about 2/3.
Okay.
And
So-
then with medical directors, we pay a little over half for that, and the other agencies make up the difference there.
Okay.
For the
So I'm
position that is
assuming-
added in this year's budget, that is an internal position. All of it will come out of our funding.
Okay, for the cost sharing though of these 3 positions,
Yes,
our cost share, let's say, our portion is 1/3, for example. Is in our personnel budget showing that 1/3 only our portion, or is it showing
our
all 3
personnel, yeah.
positions
Okay.
100%?
Now I understand your question, thank you. It is showing 100% of the cost in our budget.
In our budget?
It is also showing revenue received in the line where we receive revenue from our access partners to pass that through to cover that cost.
That's where I'm not finding that. That's where I'm not tracking in the revenues.
We are showing, we have department revenue, and then there's a line item that would, it looks like normally have intergovernmental revenue. So I guess I'm just wondering if that intergovernmental revenue payments from the other cities, is that under department revenue?
No.
Madam Chair, if
Yes.
you can chime in. It's under the department revenue, so there's a separate line in that other packet I gave you. We'll have the various line items broke out for all the revenue, not on the summary sheet. So sorry, but yes, there is a line
So
item
it's
specific
really-
that
So it's
for department.
interdepartmental, well, not. inter-
It's just,
but
it's revenue,
yeah.
just department
Okay.
revenue, whatever the department revenue would
Okay,
be,
so that's broken out.
just through the contracts that they have.
Okay, that clarifies it. Thank you.
Yes, and in fiscal year 20, the total revenue received from joint powers in that line is $277,000.
Thank you. Oh, we walked through that one.
All right,
Thanks.
I'm gonna have to speed up if we're gonna keep on track. So I will, I'll shoot through some of this a little quicker. Education, one of the things that Ada County Paramedics does is act as the regional training center for the American Heart Association. This helps us internally with our ability to get access to the newest materials the quickest, to develop experienced provider courses for our folks that have gone through this curriculum multiple times. We did 79 classes in-house with 749 students. We also oversee the external sites that provide Heart Association training and oversaw a total of 675 classes and 4,032 students. And one of the goals, there's 2 really. One is to keep our department on the front edge of understanding what the best practice is with cardiac resuscitation. The other one is building a heart-safe community. Getting CPR education out there and supporting that in any way that we can, because it's a factor that plays right back into how survivable our community is in a sudden event. The other piece of education is providing block training for all of the agencies that participate within Access. So we provide 4 large-scale trainings a year. We bring in all of the on-duty personnel and rotate them through so that they work together, they train together, and they do that hand in hand so that we get high performance in the field because that's what they're all used to. We utilize Target Solutions to roll out distributed learning. Ada County Paramedics does production work to develop training that we can push out in a distributed platform, engage all of the providers at their convenience in their stations to make sure that everyone is up to speed on what we need, and also to deliver just-in-time training in a very efficient manner. ISU, that program continues. We are running their paramedic school and have for many years now. That we're at the highest enrollment to date. We have 46 applicants for this upcoming year, and 28 have been selected to participate in the Meridian campus. The community paramedic curriculum is continuing forward, and we are working to build that program as well. One of the things that we see out of the education that we do is some awards in excellence. And one of those is the Mission Lifeline Gold Plus Award, which is the highest level of award available from the American Heart Association for the work that we do with STEMI patients. Where you have an acute heart attack, It is truly a time-sensitive and emergency, and so how fast we are able to acquire a 12 lead, get that to the hospital, get notification, activate the cath lab, and get the patient in to the cardiac cath lab for definitive care, all of those things directly affect how much heart is saved. And so working together with the hospitals to make the most efficient system we can has resulted in this award, and we have exceeded all of the standards that they set forth in it. The other one we
Congratulations
look
on
at,
that.
what's
I
that?
say congratulations
Oh,
on
thank
that.
you.
Great job.
The other one we look at is a registry called CARES, which is a cardiac arrest registry across the country. And it gives another good source for us to benchmark our performance against other communities that we are similar to. Overall, from all sources of cardiac arrest, 9.5% are successfully resuscitated and go on. In Ada County, that number is 13.4%, so significantly higher than the average. In bystander witnessed events, it goes from 14% nationally to almost 20% in Ada County. And then by the Utstein standard, which is a specific subset of cardiac arrest, focusing on ventricular fibrillation and ventricular tachycardia, which are the most successfully resuscitated events. Nationally, we see 34.4% of those patients are resuscitated. In Ada County, we see 43.3% are resuscitated. And the other thing that leads to that is bystander CPR happens in 38% of the calls across the country. In Ada County, it happens 52% of the time, which is certainly one of the factors that leads to our outcomes. Special events, year to date, we've done 103 special events. Most of these we push towards the private services. Many of the events, though, are of a size and scale that private services do not have the resource to be able to staff them adequately. A great example is the Boise State football games. There's a full incident command structure that is in place for the management of those games, and the resources and knowledge and expertise that are required to run those are not available elsewhere. And so larger scale events, we do keep ourselves fairly busy. We work with the city of Boise on their special events team to make sure that everyone has an appropriate level of coverage, and wherever possible, we steer that in the direction of the private services.
So Darby, before you go to the next slide, just quickly on Western Idaho Fair, I see an
Yes.
average of 100 patient contacts per day. So
Yes.
that's a 10-day fair, so that's about 1,000 patient contacts in that
Yes.
10 days. How many of those are severe, or would you categorize as?
Typically, we'll transport maybe 1, 2, 3 patients a day out of there.
Okay, out of that.
Most of them are low acuity issues that it's just much more convenient for the public if they can manage it right there at the fair and return to what they're doing.
Thank you.
Some of those are really, like the Boise Music Festival, very weather dependent. A lot of the long distance runs, Roby Creek, very weather dependent. The first year we had the Boise Music Festival, I believe it was 104 degrees. We had our portable hospital set up for that. We had all 24 beds filled. We had people on the grass, and we had people inside our facility there at the fairgrounds, all being treated simultaneously. Because there's something about really hot days, music and beer that work absolutely perfectly to put somebody on the ground.
Wouldn't know anything about that.
Community outreach, we engage the community frequently and in as many ways that we can. Pulse Point is one of the things that we have been pushing for the last couple of years. It has been successful for us. If you don't have the app on your phone, go to the App Store or the Android store and download Pulse Point and follow Ada County City Emergency Services System. This is the application if you know how to do CPR and you are in close proximity to someone in a public place who needs CPR, you will get a notification much like an Amber Alert directing you to exactly where they're at and notifying you of any automatic external defibrillators that are available close to the patient. And so we believe this is an excellent way for the community to simply become more survivable.
I'm
so
looking
we-
at it right now.
All
There's
right,
a
we encourage everyone to
Emergency
download the
on
app.
Denton Street. So,
Anybody here in the audience need someone?
yeah.
Good.
Our community paramedic program continues to be a vibrant thing. Field referrals come in from our staff, from fire department staff, from law enforcement staff. And those are referrals where they find someone that simply doesn't have the right resources to be able to care for themselves. And instead of waiting for that to become a problem, the community paramedics are able to engage with those people, get them connected with the appropriate resources, or get them the insight and the information that they need to be able to manage themselves effectively at home.
Madam Chair, well, maybe you're going to get to this, but you may or may not know that Sheriff Bartlett has a request for a clinical social worker as a part of his request this year to work alongside the CIT folks. I'm just wondering how we envision that person or that team working alongside the psychiatric emergency team. Could you give us a flavor of that?
Having not had that conversation with the sheriff yet, I'm not sure what his vision is for that particular position, whether that's primarily an in the jail position or whether it is externally focused.
Okay, it sounds like it's going to be externally focused, so I expect there's some good opportunities for collaboration that we'll want to explore.
I know Boise Police Department has a similar position. And a lot of the focus there is in the education of officers and really the development of programs to most effectively work with mental issues in the field.
Okay.
Next project that we run annually, and we've been very successful with, is flu vaccine clinics for all of the Ada County personnel. And we hit almost 50% by bringing the clinics close to where they work and providing it in a way that is not disruptive to their day. It has been very successful and something we continue to do. We've talked a little bit about the project that we're working on in the map section N30, which is where we get a lot of our homeless patients from. And engaging the community paramedics with them, with the facilities and different stakeholders in that region to figure out what resources could we bring to bear that would change the growth of calls that we're seeing in that area, which is substantially beyond what we see normally.
Do you have those statistics, or can you get them to us?
I can get them to you, yes.
30 project, thanks.
Yes.
Okay.
And the last piece is our psychiatric emergency team, which is a collaboration between health and welfare, crisis intervention team, law enforcement, and the medical community. And the intent was to avoid unnecessary emergency department visits for people with mental health issues that were in crisis. And as we look at this, every time we can divert a patient that needs to go to a psychiatric facility around the emergency department, there's about a $2,500 cost difference versus the one that goes through the emergency department. And so they developed a process and a protocol for screening the patients, doing swabs to detect whether they have drugs in their system, get a blood alcohol level, do a history and physical, figure out whether they would be safe for a direct admission straight to the psychiatric facility. For each patient that we successfully divert, at the bottom end, it would be about $2,500 that the community saves. And so with 200 patients in the 2018 numbers total, we're looking at a savings of at least $500,000. When we look at ultimate outcomes, there's a good number that are diverted around the emergency department. There's an even higher number that are managed at home without either the emergency department bill or psychiatric admission bill. And so there, our cost savings goes up substantially over just the diversions of the emergency department.
Madam Chair, Darby, I'm trying to, budgets are, all in my head right now, so I'm trying to
Yes.
remember if we've already had this conversation. But as you know, I think it's been about a year and a half since Pathways Community Crisis Center opened. And so I'm wondering, when you're talking about these diversions around the ER, how much either, paramedics, community paramedics are making use of that resource? Just kind of give me a flavor there.
That I would look to Mark.
Want to call a lifeline?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you the
And you
high
can
level
give
view.
that
He
to
can
us,
give you
yeah.
the street level view.
Yeah.
Come right up here, front and center. I'm injured. Yeah, be nice
Are
to
you on-
Mark.
Against you.
He's
Are
splintered
you
up
on
here.
my pulse point?
Right. Madam Chair, Commissioner Alejandro, I apologize. Could you repeat your question again on that?
So let's back up a little bit. However many years ago, the legislature decided that they wanted to invest funding into local communities by creating these behavioral health crisis centers. There is some discussion that on a go-forward basis, they're going to be looking for local communities to put up 50% of the funding. It's a whole other conversation. But as we head into that, I'm just wondering, when we're looking at these diversions out of the ED, what do you see? How often are you making use of that crisis center?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Alejandro, that's a great question. I'm not lead on this particular project, so I can give you my perspective. One of my colleagues, Renee Miller, would be the person that could give you very specific information. But I would say, especially when you're talking about Pathways, the crisis center, more and more, it's becoming a resource that could potentially divert an involuntary hold altogether, if that makes sense. So maybe someone initially looks to meet criteria to be placed on an involuntary hold, and because of the collaborative nature of working with mobile crisis and law enforcement, they really can evaluate that patient both physically and mentally, and sometimes either come up with a safety plan that may include a referral or a recommendation to Pathways. And I'm hoping this is answering your question. And then even facilitate transportation many times, either with bystanders, friends, or law enforcement, to get that patient to the most appropriate care. I feel anecdotally, listening to my colleagues that work on this program, that the referral to Pathways, for example, the crisis center, is being utilized more and more. Okay. We're learning more of what they can do and the patient that could best fit the services that they provide. Did that answer your question?
And again, I apologize, sir, but I'm trying to tie all these pieces and parts together, right? Because
sure.
we're, looking at this component, got a request from the sheriff for the CAT, in a little bit here, Phil's gonna be talking to us about indigent services and just seeing all those different pieces and parts and how we can achieve better outcomes and cost savings all along the way the county touches it.
I do feel that, especially with the CITC, moving forward, many of your questions will be answered. I do know that when that group meets, including with us, it really is looking at what does collaboration look like and what does leveraging the resources that are available or being requested, what will that leveraging and collaboration look like? I think everyone's very mindful about what that potential program is, but as Darby said, that's a little above my pay grade, so I don't want to misspeak on that.
Thank you.
One of the other things we had to do with that was to get permission from the state for the community paramedics to actually take them there.
Right.
Because it turns out that that's not an ambulance transport, and a community paramedic in a suburban is a one-person resource, which is not legal to transport as an ambulance. And so we sat down and worked with them, because it's like, we're not really taking them as a patient. If they were a patient, we'd take them to a hospital.
Right.
And so how would we do that? And actually got to a point that that's a doable thing and something that we're able to do just to facilitate getting them there, which sometimes is half the battle.
Half the battle,
Yep.
absolutely. Okay.
So the other, with your mention of indigent services has been one of the funds that has helped support community paramedics doing this psychiatric emergency team, because we see direct benefit back to the county from the cost savings of having that plan in place. Provider wellness in-house, because it turns out that these resources are as good for our people as they are for everybody else. Being a paramedic, being a first responder is an extremely high-stress profession. And the circumstances that our people find themselves in the course of their duties are extremely stressful to them. And so in-house, we fully support our peer support team. These are people that have gone through additional training from the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation in doing CISD debriefings and diffusings, and being at one-on-one resource that anybody in the department can go to and get some, if nothing else, get a good ear to bend. If they need more than that, get referral to the resources that they need and get some help along the way. We have dedicated counselors that we work with that are familiar with our people, our culture, the environment they work in, and so that's much more effective when our people do get stressed and need some assistance in working their way through that. We're very grateful for Dr. Hilvers and the Emergency Responders Health Clinic. He has really taken on the point of how do we implement the new law with allowing PTSD to be covered under work comp. And so as our work comp provider, he's really spearheading that so that we have a good pathway there. We have integrated health and well-being into our new hire academy, so that is something we start teaching from day one to get people off on the right foot. And we are working towards annual fitness evaluations just to encourage that portion of health is staying physically fit. Now we're to the short part. We'll go through funding. And as Phil said at the beginning, we are a separate taxing district. Taxes in this upcoming budget are going to account for about $6.6 million of the revenues that are available for providing the service. User fees, the fees that we generate, will come to about $10 million. And retained earnings, which we use for our capital expenditures, in this year will amount to $1.9 million. When we look at payment sources, most of them come from an insurance. There is private insurance and there are public insurances. One of the challenges in our industry is that an increasing percentage of our people are in some kind of a federal insurance program, be it Medicare, Medicaid. Back in 2002, the federal government decided that they were going to set what a bill would be worth, and a company was barred from being able to collect the balance of that. And so they effectively set our rates, unfortunately, not at a level that is sustainable. But an increasing portion of our populace is covered under those programs.
So Darby, on the federal reimbursement rates, what percentage of that are we getting, and then what's the gap on the actual cost?
The gap varies depending on the total overall bill, but we get about 35 cents on the dollar
Oh, that's, okay.
of what's expected, and the rest of it is mandatory write-off. So this year, in 2018, we wrote off in excess of $7 million for patients that were covered under Medicare or Medicaid.
Madam Chair, Darby, so presumably we've also been writing off costs or charges for folks who have no insurance. And
That's
we
correct.
expect in this valley, of this 62,000 plus people who, currently are in the coverage gap, a significant portion of those folks are likely to be in Ada County. So while we are still going to have a gap from those folks,
Yep.
Are you feeling hopeful in terms of some additional resources coming in because folks will be covered by Medicaid? Have we run any assessment on that?
I'm hopeful in that something is better than nothing, but the something isn't adequate for what we do.
Okay.
And so, it's absolutely better than writing off because they have no resources. So in addition to the $7 million in federally mandated write-offs, we have over $2 million a year in bad debt write-off.
Okay.
Because we know, we will provide service at 100% to everyone that calls. And we don't do the biopsy on the front end of that. We provide full service. And there are many of the people that we serve that have no resource to pay.
Wallet biopsy, okay.
That's from the private industry terms. One of the things that we do offer is a membership program for people that want to get relieved of any billing issues at all. It's $75 a year for family coverage, and we take what insurance pays and we write off the balance. We have about 2,400 people that are active in that program currently, and that's just an ongoing process of getting the word out and continuing to build that. So challenges, really quickly, we've talked on most of these things. Ada County growth and how that happens is our biggest challenge, and it's our most ongoing. The size of the department when I started doesn't look anything like the department that we have today. And I suspect that in 20 years, the department we have today won't look anything like what we've got then. The growth and how that growth is managed, whether it is contiguous growth, whether it is density growth, or whether it is dispersed and disparate, will have a big impact on what it costs us to provide service and the level of service that we can sustain. The more widely spread the populace is, the more costly it becomes to provide services within response performance standards. The other piece that comes hand in hand with that is traffic network congestion. Okay, an ambulance could cover a greater distance 10 years ago reliably than it can cover today. Because the roadways were not as congested, it was easier to move through traffic. When traffic is backed up in both directions, there is no moving through it. You kind of worm your way through it at a slow pace, and it limits the effective radius that a single response vehicle can hit. And the last one that plays into what we do is a lag from growth to funding. And so some of our funding comes from property taxes, but a good majority of our funding comes from user fees.
Madam Chair, Darby, one of the pieces, again, that we discussed earlier during these budget proceedings was county impact fees. To date, that's not been something that we've done, at least in unincorporated Ada counties. And not only am I interested in looking at that, but also looking at where applicable impact fees from Ada County might be applicable within incorporated cities for services that we provide. So
Okay.
we're going to be asking to feather that into the budget for the deliberation process. So at least to the part that is possible, we might be able to help growth pay for itself more on the front end.
I've had some conversations with the fire chiefs. Most of them are very for impact fee use. One of the advantages that they have is the predictability of, okay, this subdivision is going to require a fire station, and this one is going to require a fire station. Our growth patterns are really focused on where do the demands come. And so interestingly, if you add 20,000 people to Meridian, I'm going to get another 700 calls in the core of downtown Boise. And so it is harder for me to allocate a specific resource to a specific funding area in the utilization of impact fees.
People don't stay
And
at their house
so
all the time? All right.
This still may be a viable approach, but we would have to research much more the level of specificity that we need to set that up on the front end.
They're just not getting hurt inside their house as much.
Okay.
Darby, I have a question on the Vital Ride, if you would, just for a moment. You mentioned that for $75 a year, you get the coverage, and that you take whatever insurance they have and you write off the rest. Are you enrolling folks that don't have insurance into this program?
They can, I believe it's $100, $150 per trip minimum fee.
So that it's not a year, it's not like a,
Well,
Membership.
$75 would cover your family for the year, and instead of having to pay the entire bill, it would be $150.
okay, but you are offering this to people without insurance?
Yes.
Okay. How are you marketing this or getting the word out to our most vulnerable populations, elderly folks, especially out in the rural communities? that could really utilize this?
We do. That's one of the things that Hadley pushes for us. We do media spots on the news channels, on radio, social media. And so it's been an ongoing process of getting the word out. I know we've done presentations in different group communities, senior living centers, that kind of thing,
Great.
to get the word out.
I'd like
One
to
of the
talk to
challenges.
somebody on your team after this. I have an idea with the Area Agency on Aging that we could have an
Excellent, okay.
immediate outreach to those folks. Thanks.
So we talked about shifting reimbursement. The last one that we pay close attention to is recruitment and retention. Across the country, EMS industry is really challenged to maintain enough people to have paramedics for adequate coverage in our area. We've been very successful at that, but making sure that we keep ourselves positioned in both salary and benefits where we are an attractive employer is very important to us to be able to provide the level of personnel that we've been able to achieve so far. And I'm way over my time. You guys should have had the red light on.
Set that up.
I'll buzz through this real quick and certainly answer any questions you have. Operating and capital, we've had an increase in education supplies, specifically Heart Association cards. We spoke to you about that a little bit ago as far as the fee structure that we were going to adjust so that became not only self-funding, but also funding some of the costs in our education department to administer that program. A third ambulance this year. We've had growth in the number of stations that we have deployed. We need to grow our fleet so that we maintain consistency in the number of units that are available for standby services and to rotate out for maintenance or damage. Cardiac monitors we talked about. This is a supplemental of 623. The entire request is $1 million. That will be coming in fairly close. We don't have an exact figure until we get through the RFP process, but based on preliminaries, we will spend the majority of that to accomplish the trade out. Personnel, we have an $82,000 increase in our overtime line. This is to manage the increased size of the department. Overtime covers people coming in doing standbys, doing training and education that are required for their certifications, and also sick and vacation coverage above what we normally anticipate in our staffing levels. And then we have asked for a new position in the education department that is an education coordinator position. As we took on Access and got deeper and deeper into this, we're managing the certifications for all of the agencies across the system. With the requirements of the training center, what we have found is that we're actually shifting training coordinator positions off to the EMS educators, which is not a good use of our resources. We needed to expand the resources available for that specific function so that we can stay on track. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. I think we probably asked them all during the process.
We don't wait till the end. I just want to say thank you, Darby. I so appreciate the time you've spent with me and I know my fellow commissioners and helping us to understand your work. I've been incredibly impressed by the work that you're doing to bring people together through the Access efforts. And your professionalism, the core values that your team has, it clearly shows. And there's just such a commitment to service. So I just want to thank you and all of the team. It's been really fun to get to know all of you, and I'm really grateful for all that you do.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you. Thank you, Darby. Nice presentation. Okay, Phil?
Yep. Thanks for taking your time, Darby. It just pushes off my presentation. All right, up next is our Ada County Public Defender. Kathleen, I'll let you introduce Tony. We'll take a break.
So we're what, 15 minutes behind?
We're doing all right.
Yeah. We'll get through it.
Are we
Ready?
set? Okay. The Ada County Public Defender is the largest criminal defense provider in Idaho, headed by Chief Public Defender Anthony Geddes. The 59 attorneys, 6 investigators, 20 support staff, and social service and research divisions coordinate to protect and defend rights of indigent persons in Ada County facing the loss of their liberty. Once appointed by the courts, attorneys within the office are immediately assigned to represent adults and juveniles accused of misdemeanor and felony offenses, persons facing involuntary mental commitments, and parents and children in child abuse and neglect proceedings. Representation follows a zealous and holistic approach, which includes regular jail and office visits with clients, social service intervention, legal research and briefing, consultation with experts, investigations, interviewing witnesses, arguing legal motions, negotiating settlements, and trying cases before judges and juries. Before you is the Public Defender's budget. Budget for their department within the current expense fund. Budget for FY20 submitted at $10,539,942, an increase of $480,151. Operating budget $2,321,172. Personnel budget $8,218,770. This budget does include supplemental requests of $516,426. Below are the changes to the budget. There are personnel budgets within PBS for 3 new positions for attorneys associated with the new judges. A position being requested to transfer from the Indigent Defense Grant for a social worker, 11 reclasses and 16 special salary adjustments, and there are no supplementals on the operating side. At this time, I'd like to ask Tony to come up and he'll give you some more information on the Public Defender's budget.
Thank you, Kathleen. Hello, Tony.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Clerk. It is my pleasure this afternoon to represent the Public Defender's Office to you and put forward our proposed FY 2020 budget. I would like to take a brief moment to thank Kathleen, Lori, and Tim. They make this process so much easier. I know others have said the same thing, but it is true. I will also say that my attorneys and staff are some of the very best in the business, and it is my honor and privilege to make this presentation on their behalf today. The Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution mandates appointment of counsel in cases where a person is at risk of losing their freedom and they are without the means to retain their own counsel. The most common way that this manifests itself, of course, is in the realm of criminal justice. In carrying out this mission, Ada County Public Defender's Office in 2018 opened approximately 12,000 criminal cases, both misdemeanor and felony, nearly 2,000 cases in juvenile court, approximately 1,320 mental commitment proceedings. We also opened approximately 227 cases of parent defense wherein children were declared in imminent danger and removed from the home by the state. Projections.
Tony, I'm sorry. I would love to have those statistics, if you could get that to us afterwards. Thanks.
Projections for FY 2019 indicate so far a fairly similar track in numbers. Our organizational structure is fairly straightforward. My chief criminal deputy, along with me, manages the felony division, our problem-solving courts, and complex litigation cases. My chief administrative deputy assists with the administration of the office. He also supervises the magistrate and juvenile divisions. We have 6 investigators, 20 staff, 1 social worker, 1 case manager. In total, that's 87 employees, 59 of whom are attorneys. Our criminal magistrate.
How many bathrooms? Yeah, we'll get to that.
I'm going to get to that. Our criminal magistrate division handles all misdemeanor cases. 14 attorneys cover 7 magistrate courtrooms. 2 attorneys cover a domestic violence docket. All 16 of these attorneys cover first appearances at the jail every day on a rotating basis. And just so you know, Ada County's been doing that for many years, long before it recently became a standard. These attorneys also handle their own appeals to the higher courts. Within a 10-year span, on average, the Magistrate Division has handled about 8,600 cases a year, the highest sheer volume of cases in the office. The 4 attorneys in our Civil Magistrate Division handle all the parent defense cases as well as most of the contempt cases. They are, in fact, specialists in this area of the law. These cases are often open for years. We can also be appointed to represent the child. We can also be appointed to represent, well, basically to be in lieu of the guardian ad litem. I know we've talked about this at some length. We can also be appointed to represent the guardian ad litem. There are a lot of permutations and entanglements in these cases. A lot of our conflicts come out of this docket. These attorneys also handle their own direct appeals. In 2018, we opened approximately 227 of these cases. This area of our practice has grown rapidly over the years. When I first started in the office in the 90s, this was a part-time job. I had a split calendar, half child protection and half criminal. That is obviously no longer the case. I have 4 full-time attorneys on this calendar. The 6 attorneys in the Juvenile Division cover 2 courtrooms. They handle misdemeanors, felonies, probation violations, contempts, numerous other matters. These cases are heard before a judge and not a jury. These attorneys also handle their own appeals. Mental commitment proceedings also are handled at Juvenile. I think this is based simply in history. The Juvenile Division was just closer to Intermountain Hospital, I think, and so that's how it started years and years ago. Nobody's really old enough to be able to answer that. Well, maybe Steve. But I think that's just the reason for it. This is an area of high growth. Again, 20 years ago, you'd get 2 or 3 mental commitments a week. It's now not unusual to see 20 or 25.
So, Madam Chair, that explains something for me. I was wondering how that came to be. What do we see in other counties, at least counties that have larger mental health commitment needs? Is that the prosecutor's office? Are we contracting? Typically, how does that typically work, if not for the geographic proximity?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So if the juvenile division is, oh, sorry, I'm confusing myself. So in other communities, the public defender's office is still handling it. It's just not necessarily the juvenile division. Do I have that correct?
That's correct. Every county kind of does it differently. I know that in other counties like, well, I won't go into detail, but I think they have various locations that they do it. This process that we have in Ada County is unique to us. And again, I think it's just the fact that it was close to Intermountain Hospital, so that's where it's been. We have had discussions with the sheriff and his people and with the TCA's office about changing how we handle mental commitments. We've thought about doing a video process that could perhaps make things a lot easier, keep from having to take people into custody, that sort of thing. So the conversation is ongoing. How long the mental commitment process will continue to be at Juvenile, I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that we're actively discussing it, and I know that one of the appellate court judges, Judge Lorello, actually comes out to Juvenile to handle a lot of those proceedings so that the juvenile judges can actually start their court on time and don't have to be sidetracked with the mentals.
Mentals, okay.
Our felony level trial attorneys handle everything from felony DUI to capital murder. We do provide vertical representation now to our clients, so absent some extraordinary circumstance, a client will now have the same attorney from the beginning of their case to the end. I have developed a complex litigation unit that handles all of the most difficult and complex cases. There are 9 attorneys on this team. 3 are qualified as lead counsel in death penalty cases, including myself. 5 attorneys are qualified as co-counsel. One of these attorneys, Danica, is co-counsel on a death penalty case in Cassia County. It's a great opportunity for her to work with one of the finest private practitioners in capital litigation. Cassia County is also paying Ada County for her services. We got our first check, I believe, yesterday. So, in addition, the felony division handles post-conviction proceedings in the district court. This is another area of high growth. When I first started, I did the post-convictions for the office because nobody else wanted to do them, and the low person on the totem got them. And we do, I'd see 2 or 3 a year. Today, it's not uncommon to see 2 or 3 a week. Our support staff, we have 20. They are the foundation of our office. We couldn't do what we do without them, obviously, from receptionists to legal assistants, supervisors. At one point, we did staff for 3 receptionists. That position is not currently filled, and upon further consideration, we're going to delete that 3rd position as unnecessary at this time. So we're going to stay at 20 support staff. We have 6 investigators. They are very busy. They handle all types of cases within the office wherever there is a need. Last year, with funding from the Indigent Defense Grant, we added a social worker to our staff. It is one of the best things that we have ever done. She is vital to helping our clients plug into the services in the community that they so desperately need. She works with attorneys and their clients to develop a plan for success that includes helping our clients with housing, employment, mental health, substance abuse treatment, etc. She has simply quite quickly become indispensable. She greatly enhances our clients' odds of successfully completing probation, and we are hopeful that through those efforts, it will lead to a reduction in recidivism.
Tony, just for clarification, on the grant, the Indigent Defense Grant, is that reflected in your budget in the sales, liquor tax, interest, intergovernmental revenues at 19% for FY19? Is that where that's located?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Are you talking specifically about the?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to find where the grant amount is located
Oh,
in the
no,
budget.
that's a separate. No.
Madam Chair, yeah, we don't budget grants.
Oh, we reopen.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
reopen
when
once
we
it
receive
comes
the
in.
money,
That's
we'll
right.
open the budget and add
We
it
don't
in.
plan to put
Yep.
it in. It's an interesting way to do it.
Yep,
Yeah.
fair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Collaborating with the sheriff, last year we were also able to employ a case manager as well. She also plays a vital role. She is another point of contact for our clients. She contacts all of our out-of-custody clients to remind them of court dates, to assess transportation needs, potentially child care needs, and also refers them to our social worker when necessary. She also helps to organize and manage the video prelim calendars on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We'll talk about that a little bit later. This graph gives us the picture of adult criminal cases the Public Defender's Office has opened since 2010. There was a spike in 2010. Misdemeanors that you see as the blue bar hit about 10,000. Recently, in the last few years, we've typically leveled out in approximately the 8,000 range. The green bar represents felonies. They have basically doubled since 2012. We anticipate felonies to be in the 4,000 range this year. I have had to shift and add resources to the felony division within the office to accommodate this felony volume, and it appears to be our reality moving forward.
I'm just curious, what's the average time that it takes to manage a felony case all the way through from cradle to grave versus a misdemeanor case, just so we have an idea?
Well, I think that is a very difficult question to answer because every felony case is very different. I can tell you that they're much more complex. They take a lot more time. But there isn't a kind of a cookie cutter formula. I can tell you that you can have a very complex misdemeanor case that can take a lot more time than a simple felony case. So there's no real easy formula there. But typically, on the whole, they take a lot more in the way of resources. Since 2010, juvenile cases have doubled, as well as mental commitment proceedings. You can see the juvenile numbers in the green. These slides, this one and the previous one, are essentially case volume snapshots over time. It's not just a public defender issue, obviously. This illustrates the pressure we all face in the criminal justice system. It has an impact on the clerks, the courts, probation and parole, jail and prisons, prosecutors, et cetera. This case volume pressure is felt across the board. This is our 10-year budget overview. This is a snapshot of our public defender budget since 2010. Our operating and capital budget, which you see has remained relatively flat at about $2 million. The operating is in green, and it's pretty much around the $2 million amount. It hasn't changed much. Our personnel budget, of course, that you see in blue has increased proportionally to represent the growth in case volume and the staff required to adequately handle that growth. The yellow and gold represents the addition of the Indigent Defense Grant that we've utilized to hire attorneys and staff, add office space, subsidize conflict costs, provide immigration consultations, etc. This is essentially the FY19 Public Defender budget, $10.17 million. The B budget for the Public Defender's Office, in case you were wondering, is typically higher than comparably staffed offices in the county, and that is due entirely to conflicts and the cases that we have to conflict out of our office, and we'll talk about those expenses a little bit. This pie chart is essentially a representation of our personnel budget. Of the nearly $7.9 million personnel budget, 78% is for attorneys, 22% is for support staff and investigators. This is the county share. This does not include the grant. Operating and capital budgets. This slide essentially brings the B budget together. Of the $2 million budget, 27% is budgeted for actual operating and capital. So as you see, actual operating and capital for our office is about $620,000. That really doesn't change a lot year to year. But of course, the larger portion of the B budget, 73%, is budgeted for conflict cases. This covers the attorney fees, expert witnesses, transcripts, their investigators, everything. This budgeting can be a bit tricky. Overall, it requires some educated guesswork from year to year. We go back over years to see what we've expended, and sometimes it can change a lot. When I first became chief in 2016, we completely redid the way we do conflicts, and we did that in an effort to reduce conflict costs, and we were able to do that. In 2016, I think our conflict costs were about $1.2 million. After we changed the way we did things, that was reduced to about $800,000 in 2017. But those costs just continue to get higher and higher as reflected by the overall case volume. And we build in a cushion there. We might, we hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Hopefully we'll spend a lot less than budgeted, but year to year that can change. This chart shows the detail for the public defender's operating budget by category of expense. Of our $620,000, you see all the various things that goes to: death penalty defense and mitigation, hearing transcripts, operating costs, computer equipment, etc. Fairly self-explanatory. This graphic details the budgeted amounts for conflict costs. Attorney fees are budgeted currently at $1.2 million. Of course, that's the most significant expense. We have 12 firms under contract with Ada County that agreed to provide conflict defense services for us. We pay $65 an hour for attorneys to handle conflict cases for us. That is still less than most counties. We have raised that recently from $45 an hour to $65 an hour. I had attorneys coming to me and just saying, look, we just can't work for that. So we raised those rates, but it's still less than Canyon County, for instance, and it's less than Twin Falls. Those rates go up for homicide cases and death penalty cases.
Madam Chair, I know we've talked a fair amount about the use of conflict attorneys as it relates to child protection cases. Could you give me some other examples of when we might use conflict attorneys?
Well, a recent example, we had a large multi-defendant gang case from the prison, 14 defendants. We ended up keeping out of those 14 about 6, and we conflicted out about 8. You get a large trafficking case, multi-defendant trafficking case. Their interests are often adverse to each other, so we can't represent both of them, or 8 or 10 of them. A large multi-defendant homicide case. We haven't had one of those in a while. Hopefully we won't. But those are the types of things when we always have to assess in a case where you have co-defendants or you have other people in the office who are telling adverse stories and they're against each other. We can't represent both of them. And so that's the process by which we have to decide who to keep and who to get rid of. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. This is the Indigent Defense Grant. We recently submitted our application For FY20 at 1.347 million. It has not yet been approved. It is a work in progress. But you can see our first allocation in 2017 was 1.25, and it has continued to go up. They have changed the formulary a little bit. When it first started, it started out at 15% of the county share. They've now done away with that, and it's now more of a needs-based assessment. So the application has changed, and so we're essentially responding to that change in process. But our application requested significantly less than what we would ordinarily be entitled to at 1.34 million.
And remind me, didn't we just get a letter asking us to explain some additional items so they could give us more funding?
I don't believe that was the intent of that letter.
Okay.
I think candidly, I think the intent of that letter was, why aren't you spending more of what you have? And we'll explain that a little bit
Okay.
as we go forward.
Okay.
Since its implementation, the public defender has received a total of $3.5 million. At the beginning of 2019 fiscal year, the public defender had, as you can see there in blue, rollover funds of $897,000 remaining. We've had rollover funds from 2017 and 18. We anticipate rollover funds from 2019. So our total indigent defense grant budget for FY19 is $2.13 million. This breaks that out a little further. I did not actually intend it to be this symmetrical, but as you can see, 31% of the indigent defense that you see in green, that goes to personnel. We fund 8 employees with that money, 5 of whom are attorneys. I will be adding additional positions with the grant funding this year. I'll go into that a little bit later. 31% that you see in yellow is for capital expenses. That pays for furniture, computer, software upgrades, building improvements. We've had 2 office expansions in the last few years. The first one, which was completed a couple of years ago, added 9 offices. They were immediately full. We have embarked now on another expansion with the clerk's assistants in kindly giving us some of their space. That will add 11 new offices. They are already full. So expansion continues. And in FY20, I am very, very hopeful of a fairly significant remodel of our restroom space. That is part of the reason for some of the rollover funds. It's kind of a real issue. We have 87 employees, and we have 2 single-use restrooms. And when you're rushing to court and you have to go,
You're going to need some more public defenders just to defend against each other.
so we'll see where that takes us, but hopefully we can address the restroom issue next year. That's part of the reason we have kept some funding aside to do that. As you're all aware, bathrooms are expensive. So.
Madam Chair, Tony, really more for maybe the general audience and folks online. I think the one piece I just want to highlight with how the state is, I want to know how grateful I think we are for the support from the state to do this, but one component that is a little bit difficult, even using the terminology of grant, supposes that it may go away at some point. And I just think it's very difficult for us to think about how we're supporting personnel out of grant funds. And I would hope as we move forward with the state, they'll start thinking about this as cost sharing versus grant funds. Because it just puts you in it puts us in a precarious position.
Well, and I appreciate those comments, and I'll say that part of the reason that I have rolled over funds and I've held back from spending all of it is I've been intentional about that because I think we have been unsure whether this is a long-term commitment from the state or not, and it's difficult to employ staff, attorneys and staff on the grant and go out on that limb, and then if you have that limb cut off, it puts us in a very difficult position. So I've been careful not to spend all of our money and to be what I feel is prudent, so that if the funding does at some point get cut off, we have enough in reserve to continue to pay them for a while I then come to you with hat in hand. But there's been a reason why we haven't spent all the money. I can tell you in some confidence, I think the process has evolved and those walls have shifted But on the whole, I think the state and the legislature are very invested in this now. I have much more confidence now that this will be continuing than I did when it first started. I think there was an approach when it first started that this might be temporary to get the counties up to speed and then let the counties fill that breach. And I think now they understand this needs to be a long-term state-county collaboration, and I think they intend this money to go forward long-term.
Didn't they reframe it this year too? They're moving from calling it a grant to something else.
They called it something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
They
Other than
did
a
change
grant.
the name of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the overall budget in this pie chart simply shows the total public defender budget for FY19, $12.3 million, 2.13 in the grant, 10.1 for the county. And that brings me to my supplemental requests. I've put them in essentially two different blocks. For the first time in my tenure as chief, I am requesting money for special salary adjustments. Typically, I have distributed salary savings, and the county has let me use those funds for that purpose. And I haven't asked for additional money for special salary adjustments. I am this year, like all departments and electeds in Ada County, I have extraordinary employees. They're hardworking and dedicated to the advancement of public defense. I feel very strongly the need to reward them for their exemplary service. I really do have some of the finest trial attorneys in the state, and this is a high-stress job. And while Ada County is a great place to work, and it really is, with salary and benefits that can attract and retain quality employees, it's the retention part that I'm concerned about. I have lost several employees recently to higher-paying jobs. I've lost a couple of attorneys to the bench. I lost an attorney to another county. I've lost attorneys to the Attorney General's office. I recently had an attorney, one of my higher-level felony-level attorneys, join the federal defenders for a significant additional salary. Now, I understand that a certain amount of attrition, and I know Jan spoke to this, a certain amount of attrition can't be entirely prevented. But if I can pay my employees a more competitive wage, my hope is to at least make that decision for them more difficult to leave the county. And so I am asking, well, let me say this. I have developed attorney levels and pay bands within those attorney levels, and those are based on skill, experience, years of service, level of responsibility. And so based on those pay bands, it's appropriate to reclassify, promote, if you will, 10 employees at a projected cost of around $22,000. I also have, based on those same skill and experience factors previously mentioned, I'm proposing and hopeful for salary adjustments for 16 employees at a cost of $88,000. Third, I'm asking, due to the increasing demands of the specialty courts, I'm asking that a part-time employee that I have, a part-time attorney, be converted to a full-time position. That will give me 3 full-time attorneys to handle the 5 problem-solving courts at a cost of approximately $52,000. Minus the unnecessary receptionist position and salary savings, the total cost to the county for the salary adjustments is projected at $65,388. Supplemental request number 2, I am requesting 4 new positions. As you know, there are new judges coming online starting in October. 2 magistrate judges. I'm asking for 1 entry-level attorney to help staff those 2 new magistrate judges. I'm asking for 2 level 2 felony level attorneys to help staff the new district court judge. That will start in October as well. I don't, at this time, believe I need any additional legal assistant staffing. I am asking for a social worker. I'm requesting that our social worker that's currently under the grant be funded by the county instead of the grant. I am so proud of the fact that Ada County is the first public defense provider in the state of Idaho to add a social worker to staff. And my plan is to have her pursue and obtain her clinical licensure, which she is in the process of working on, and essentially be the supervisor of an expanded unit. It's so important to what we do. 1 is just not sufficient. My hope is that she'll become a county-funded employee and essentially be a supervisor of an expanded unit, that expanded unit to be funded through the Indigent Defense Grant. So the 4 positions come at a total projected cost of $353 for a total request of $418,000 in supplemental requests. Now, just so you know, I am also adding attorneys and staff to the Indigent Defense Grant form of funding. That will be in addition to any positions I obtain from the county. I am requesting 2 felony-level attorneys for the grant, 1 additional investigator, and our case manager. The funding for the case manager will no longer be available next year. It is the consensus of my staff that she's too important to let go. My hope is to, and I will add her to the Indigent Defense Grant funding for next year.
Madam Chair, Tony, you had indicated earlier that that case manager was shared with the sheriff's office. Could you explain what some of the changes are?
Yeah, we collaborated with the sheriff. They were fantastic in this process. They got the MacArthur Grant funding, and part of the entire point to all of that was to try and reduce jail population. And so there were numerous positions with the sheriff, with us, with the courts to try and work together to help reduce those costs. And I think we did a fantastic job of doing that, but the funding has come to an end, and now we have this position. She's been so fantastic, we really don't want to lose her. She really has, in her contact with our clients, she has the ability, I think, to greatly reduce failures to appear. You'd be amazed how many people have said, "Thank you for your call. I completely forgot about court tomorrow." So, very important person. Changes and accomplishments, there are a lot of things. I'll just mention a few. After many years and a lot of effort, starting with my predecessor, we have finally been able to provide vertical representation across the board. The clerk's office helped us. They worked very hard on this. And it wouldn't have happened, frankly, without the leadership of Judge Moody and the TCA's office as well. We have significantly enhanced our education and training for our attorneys. We've collaborated with public defense services in Arizona, California, Oregon, Wisconsin. We send our attorneys to training seminars, trial schools, death penalty seminars, specialized voir dire training, etc. We now actively encourage our attorneys to work together on their cases. Younger attorneys actively seek out senior attorneys to help them on their cases. Felony-level practitioners routinely reach out to younger, less experienced attorneys and recruit them to help try cases with them. This mentoring has really enhanced the skill and training and experience of our attorneys across the board. We've become much better at supervision and oversight. We observe our attorneys in court. We conduct evaluations with our management team. We conduct regular file audits. In short, we just simply work hard to keep our finger on the pulse of our attorneys and staff and what they're doing. I do have a complex litigation unit. These are the attorneys that through skill, experience, and aptitude can handle the most complex of cases, including all life sentence cases, robbery, sex offenses, murder, death penalty cases, etc. I've talked about our social worker and case manager at length. Through their continuing efforts and working with them, we engage our clients a lot earlier in the process and a lot more often. For our clients to succeed, they really do need more than legal expertise, and that's what she brings to the table. That's part of our holistic approach. Jail sweeps, pretrial release, these are all efforts that we undergo to get people who shouldn't be in jail, who don't need to be in jail, but can't afford the nominal bond, to help get them out. I can tell you that's been effective. We have gotten people out of jail that can't afford the $100 bond on their in the park after dark ticket. We have seen a reduction in bonds. Pretrial release, we have a working group working on that. It launches later this year. It's been in testing. We have seen an increase in people being released on their own recognizance under pretrial release supervision instead of having to post bond. So the goal is to get people out of jail.
Tony, is that a formal program, or is that something that you're just sort of doing when you have time? Can you explain
No,
it
it's
to us?
formal. Yeah, the courts are involved in that. The sheriff's involved in that. prosecutors, public defenders, we have a formal working group. We're working on it together.
Okay, you referred to it as a jail sweep?
Well, that's a separate issue. I
What-
lumped those
what's this
together.
program?
The jail sweep is a more informal program. It's where we get together with the prosecutor, we work with the sheriff to find out who in the population at the jail really shouldn't be there and help get them in front of a judge to get them released.
Thank you.
And that is different than the pretrial release program. Okay. Video prelims has been a great success. I can tell you there were some people that were resistant to it, even judges. It was a change in the way we do things, but frankly, it was mutually beneficial to everyone. The sheriff has been fantastic in this regard. He's been a great partner in this process. We have better, easier, more frequent access to our clients than we ever have before. We have our own office at the jail now. We have video prelims at that morning scrum, so everyone appears via video on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and that saves him a tremendous amount of transport costs. It benefits us in that we have much easier, more frequent, earlier contact with our clients. We're in the process of expanding video prelims. We started out with Friday because we weren't sure how it would go. Pretty soon it will be all 5 days a week. That will happen in the next few months. We have, with the help of the Public Defense Commission and the Indigent Defense Grant, we've used that funding to employ more attorneys and staff at no cost to Ada County. It's helped us reduce caseload and those workload pressures that are pertinent to that. It has helped to address the space issues as well. Another reason that I have not spent all of my Indigent Defense Grant funding is we have more space that we're going to need. We're in the process of cleaning out storage so we can take files that are stored now in the office and take them out to storage. Phil's talked about the vast space out there under faces. Once we are done with our files, we're planning on reconfiguring that space for additional offices as well. I'm very excited, my attorney's less so, for time tracking. But it will really allow me to drill down into the work my attorneys are doing, how specifically they allocate their time. The data will be much more accurate than what we can obtain right now. How many cases do they work? What types of tasks are being conducted? Average amount of time put into each of these types of tasks. It will be instrumental to us, and I think to other counties in the future, developing appropriate and reasonable caseload standards. Goals, of course, to attract and retain quality employees with the emphasis on retain. Continuing to attempt to reduce caseload and workload. Those stresses are very real. I continue to utilize the resources that I have in an attempt to ameliorate those stresses. We continue to explore the country for the very best in training programs for our new attorneys. We're also trying to develop, for the first time in our county, a better training and mentoring approach to brand new attorneys that join our office right out of law school. A more of a let's teach you how to do this and less of a throw you to the wolves kind of approach. We're actively working on that right now. We will never stop trying to improve our client care. It's one of our #1 priorities. We relentlessly endeavor to provide better customer service to our clients. It's why we're here. We represent many thousands of clients every year. We're not going to make them all happy, but it won't be for lack of trying. I've talked about the restrooms enough. I'm going to move on. Challenges.
I'm envisioning a ribbon cutting. It's going to be pretty exciting. Yeah.
Epic. It's going to be a photo opportunity. Our challenges are fairly self-evident. Increases in caseload, particularly at the felony and juvenile levels. Increases in the complexity of the workload. Jan touched on this, and it's absolutely true. I can tell you that in cleaning out storage, we've been getting rid of files from the late 70s, the early 80s. You can take out a homicide file, and we're totally digital now, so we don't have files anymore, right? But you can take out a homicide file from the 80s, and it'll be that thick, right? Today, a standard homicide case is 5, 6, 7 bankers' boxes full of documents, right? There's just, the way we practice is different today than we did 20, 30 years ago. Clients are more sophisticated. That's not a bad thing by any means, but we do spend some time explaining to them how what they found on their Google search does not apply to their case. So it has made that relationship a little bit more difficult. But again, that's not a bad thing. Expectations of service continue to rise. Again, criminal defense has evolved. A lot more is expected and required, and frankly, that's a good thing. A lot more work goes into these cases than what was the case even 5 years ago. Ever-increasing scrutiny of public defense, it's hard on my people. I'll just be candid. Scrutiny is not a bad thing. I welcome it. But there are organizations within and without the state that have never been public defenders, have no idea who we are and what we do, and yet they're experts in public defense, and whatever we do isn't good enough. That can wear you out. It's hard. I will say, in closing, I can say with confidence that the state of your public defender's office is strong. We continue to strive constantly to get better, and I'll tell you, the future is bright. I am so incredibly impressed with the young attorneys coming out of law school today. They are smart, hardworking, passionate. They're hungry. They're eager to learn. They have natural aptitude for this work. It is absolutely fantastic to watch the young attorneys who will be the leaders of our office in the future. It's fun to be a part of. Of course, we can only do what we do because of your support. The county has been very supportive of the public defenders through the years, and we couldn't do what we do without you. I'll echo the comments of others. I really appreciate you. You are engaged, you're passionate, you inquire. It's been great working with you, and I look forward to many years.
Thank you so much, Tony. I think you know how we feel about you and your team as well. It's mutual. You guys are so dedicated and passionate, and it shows every day, and we do truly appreciate all the hard work that you do for our community.
I'd just echo that. We have so much to be proud of. I believe we have the premier public defense office in the state of Idaho, and more than that, beyond. So I'm really thankful for all the work that you do. And, if there's any theme that people are picking up based on my comments, I'm so appreciative of the leadership that you and your office have shown in terms of thinking about what are the investments that we need to make now, the investments, the practices, so that we're not spending more money down the road, as well as providing better outcomes for our community. That's sometimes hard to do, pay me now or pay me later, but I'm certainly appreciative of it. And I also believe the restrooms are a big factor as well. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for your presentation. Appreciate
Tony,
it.
I'll add, I appreciate your partnership and that you coordinated your outfit, so I have an alibi in case I say anything stupid later.
Yeah, you guys look almost identical.
I was first.
Break time.
Yeah, with that, Madam Chair, I think we are ready for a break. Do you want to reconvene at 3?
Okay, thank you. Let's continue with our budget presentations. Phil, who do we have next?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be up next for the Clerk of the District Court, followed by the Department Administration, as well as some of this afternoon, one of the things you'll see is part of our budget when Kathleen presents. She'll include the Avamore Infrastructure District. You'll also have Public Health and Veterans. These are things we won't really discuss much, but just so you know that they're coming up. But with that, I'll turn it over to Kathleen.
Thank you. The Clerk of the District Court is one of 7 constitutionally elected offices in with Ada County. Clerk Phil McGrain heads the Clerk's office, which includes the divisions of the Auditor, Recorder, Elections, Indigent Services, Consolidated Elections, Clerk of the Court, Administration, and recently added Board of Community Guardians. Auditor, Recorder, and Elections are divisions in the Clerk's office, which are funded in the general fund. The Auditor's Office assists with the development and implementation of the budget, as well as other financial responsibilities, such as accounting, payroll, and countywide financial reporting. The Recorder handles the recording of land records and issues marriage and liquor licenses. The Election Office conducts up to 4 elections per year for over 250,000 registered voters in 150 precincts, and deploys a number of poll workers and temporary employees to staff the precincts on election day and work election night. Indigent Services provides financial assistance to qualified Ada County residents for medical, mental health, and other expenses. Consolidated Elections is a separate fund that is specifically dedicated to conducting elections for districts and political subdivisions within Ada County, such as cities and school districts. Clerk of the Court, or Clerk's Office, provides clerical support for the courts. The office processes and maintains all case filings, collects fines and fees, and supports judges of the 4th District Court in Ada County. In addition, the Court Assistance Office helps pro se defendants navigate the court system. Finally, also submitted with the clerk's budget is the Avamore Community Infrastructure District, or CID number 1, which is managed by District Directors Kendra Kenyon, Rick Visser, and Diana Lasciando. The Avamore CID District number 1 provides for infrastructure improvements within the boundaries of the Avamore community. It is divided into 2 departments, administration and debt services. Administration is responsible for all expenses related to the operation of the CID, such as management of the district, legal and banking services, procurement, and accounting and budget services. Debt service accounts for the payments received from the homeowners within the district boundaries as levied on their property taxes, and payments made for debt based on the debt schedules provided at the time of debt issuance. So we'll go through all of these budgets before I turn it over to Phil. First up is the clerk's budget. They are part of the district court fund, the 3% cap on property taxes. Budget submitted for FY20, $8,617,063, a decrease of $89,651. Operating budget, $352,405. Personnel budget, $8,264,658. This does include supplemental requests of $226,892. And you'll see below the changes, and those requests for supplementals are for 4 new positions for clerks related to the new judges. Moving on to the auditor, recorder, and elections. They are a department within the current expense fund, 3% cap on property taxes. Budget for FY20 submitted at $3,985,775, an increase of $532,879. Operating budget $1,345,325. Personnel budget $2,640,450. There are no supplementals with this budget. Revenue is used to supplement it. Below you can see the changes. Consolidated Elections is a self-supported special revenue fund. Their department revenue budget supports 100% of their expenses. Budget for FY20, $725,678, an increase of $22,279. Operating budget $430,022. Personnel budget $295,656. Changes listed below. A couple more here. Indigent. They are a special levy fund, part of the 3% increase on property tax. Budget for FY20 submitted at $11,434,157, an increase of $923,916. Operating budget $9,888,857. Personnel budget $1,545,300. There's a supplemental request here for $812,000. The changes are below, and the 2 supplementals are on the operating side, entitled Housing First Initiative New Path Increase and Family Homelessness, a public-private partnership, Commissioner Lasciando. And then finally, we have Avamore, which is a special taxing district similar to EMS. They are a component unit. Budget for FY20 submitted at $286,542, an increase of $55,821. All operating budget $286,542, and the changes listed below are basically for increase in administration and the interest and principal payments. And at this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Phil and give you some more information on all of those budgets.
Okay, great, thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lasciando, thank you guys for the opportunity. And before I begin, I just want to thank my staff who supports me, both for their patience and for their assistance along this process, specifically Trent, Sarah Lund, and Daisy Lewis, who all worked very hard to try and make sure I had the information necessary to pull this all together, even as we approach the last minute, because that's how I tend to operate. And as much, just like everyone else has expressed, this whole process is the culmination of a lot of work between Kathleen and her team, HR, and a number of people who pull this information together. And it's truly, I really appreciate all the work that they do. And for the presentation itself, Chelsea Caratini has been working back and forth with me for the past week, just trying to pull this together. And with that, I'll start just to give you a little bit of overview of the clerk's office. Often when people ask me, what do I do? I explain that I work for the clerk's office, which is immediate file, but what does the clerk's office do? And I like to describe, we are the wheels and the cogs of county government. We're the ones working behind the scenes to make everybody else's process come together. I think a great historical reference for that is historically, generally speaking, the clerk was often the first full-time county employee in any of the counties. It started with you would have a district judge, and the clerk was the clerk to the district judge. Someone needed to be able to have office hours, handle all the filings that come in. I'd say answer the phones, but this predates the phone, and handle everything else. And over time, it's that office that has grown because as new functions have been added to the county, as it's grown, what you see is those things that no one knows quite what to do with, you hand them over to the clerk. And you'll see that when you see the scope of the responsibility. We have a large breadth and scope in terms of what we do. I think in terms of that historical reference also, it's kind of, we serve as that inner working system to keep things running smoothly. I'm fortunate enough to serve as the 15th elected clerk since statehood. To put that into perspective, Governor Brad Little is the 33rd governor of the state of Idaho, and you'll note his predecessor served a few extra terms. So just looking at our system, our first and largest division is the courts. As I mentioned, our first function historically was the clerk to the district court. We are the backbone of the court system. As you heard earlier from Sandra, TCA's office supports the judges, making sure they have the materials and the supplies, but we serve as the hub of the judicial system where everything comes through. A judge isn't able to adjudicate a case unless the filings arrive at that judge for them to review. So all of the attorneys, the prosecutor, the public defender, all the parties work through our office. We serve as that main station for everything to come in and out of. And a lot of work goes on behind the scenes so that when a hearing comes up and the judge appears at the dais and everyone's in place, all the materials are staged and ready to go so that proceeding can run smoothly. And it's through the dedicated work of our staff in the courts that makes that possible. Second, as we are also the county recorder. This is another function that's existed prior to statehood. The recorder's office predominantly handles property records. We can trace back even to statehood, the history of your property, who owned it, what went on. The title companies rely heavily on us. This is where title insurance and everything else comes in. It gives us a good sense of what's going on in the economy. In addition to property record management and just managing historical records, we also issue marriage licenses. We handle liquor licenses, various permits, including peddler's permits and other things. Our next function is as the county auditor. This is the function you're relying on very heavily right now. We are the chief financial officer for the county. We handle all the accounting and manage all the books to ensure we know where every dollar in the county is at and where it's headed, and make sure to enforce many of the accounting policies, whether that's statutory or county policies that have been set by the board, to make sure we're in compliance with that. And we're the ones tracking, making sure processes like the budget happen so that we know we have a balanced budget and are submitting it timely, as well as monitoring it throughout the year and doing our financial reports so that people can rely on them. Next is elections. As I think you are intimately aware, we handle all elections, everything from presidential elections all the way down to, we just handled last month the Warm Springs Water District election, which was second to an HOA election, or pretty darn close if you ask me. And so we'll handle everything in between, and it keeps us busy. The best way I like to describe elections is we are the largest event planning operation in the state of Idaho. We host a big event and we just invite 250,000 of our closest friends. Next is a process you're also very familiar with, is indigent services. Indigent services, as Kathleen mentioned, provides financial assistance to people who have found difficult times, specifically with medical and mental health, but we also provide financial assistance for rent assistance, trash assistance, cremations, and other things. And we do the evaluations to handle those processes to make sure somebody's eligible and to get everything staged so that a decision can be made. We also have an administrative division. This administrative division supports all those other divisions. It's where Trent and I lie. We also have a support team. So Anthony, that you're familiar with, sits in the admin division, providing data analysis and performance metrics throughout the entire office, whether that's monitoring how long people are on phone calls or how long our wait times are, to looking towards ballot projections and elections. We have a team of people that provide support and assistance in hiring and everything else to make sure the other divisions can be doing their very best work throughout every day. And then, as Kathleen also mentioned, most recently, we added a new division within our office, the Board of Community Guardians. I think at this point, I just want to mention one thing because it's timely. The extraordinary work that Bonnie Malmstrom has done for this. I think it's been a whirlwind on our side, learning everything about the Board of Community Guardians and all the work that has gone into it. But in particular, her passion. She served the county for 19 years. But more importantly, I think it's the people she served. The Board of Community Guardians handle some people who are in the most difficult of situations. When there is no one else to care for someone, and it truly means when there is no one else in the world to care for someone, this position and this role picks up that work. And so I've quickly learned what a daunting task and what a level of commitment Bonnie had. She really did it through heart more than anything else, taking calls well into the evening, weekends, and other times, and she served our county extremely well. Shifting gears a little, beyond Board of Community Guardians, we also serve in many other roles. You may not often realize it, but we have cross-deputized employees throughout who are serving on my behalf in official functions. Every time you refer to Judy or Sandy as Madam Clerk, you are referring to the clerk's office. This very meeting and the minutes that are being taken are an extension of the role of the clerk and the work that we do. We also serve in many cross-deputized roles, including in the TCA's office, Public Defender's office, and Prosecutor's office. All in total, we have 197 employees. That makes us the second largest department in the county, our office. We also have the second largest budget in the county. Mind you, we're not a close second to the sheriff. He's almost 3 times our size, but we do our part. In addition to the 197 employees that we have in our office, we have a total of 247 people who are deputized. That's 50 additional cross-deputized employees working on behalf of the clerk's office and fulfilling all these functions. I think one of the biggest things, when you look at all of this, the enormity and the breadth, I think that's one of the things that makes us unique. Most of the offices, as you've heard throughout the presentations, have a clear, unified focus. We are that catch-all. We are the ones working behind the scenes to make things work smoothly. And it also highlights where our mission comes from. Our mission is to serve our community in a way that builds trust in government. Everything that we do, if you look through all those functions there on the screen, trust is a huge component. We often serve people at their most difficult times, whether that's through a really challenging divorce or child custody battle, or when somebody has hit hard financial times and can't pay their medical bills and has to turn over both medical history and financial history to our office. When people go to vote, there's no point in showing up if you don't trust that the people behind the scenes are going to handle that process fairly. Trust is a huge component. But more importantly, it's not trust just within the clerk's office. We are serving as a support function for so many other extensions, whether that's supporting you as the board and the trust that the community has to have place in you to fill your functions, or the trust in the judges that they will treat the parties that come before them fairly. Judge Moody, a while back, gave a great presentation to all the court staff on judicial fairness. And a key component of that, she recognized it's not just the judges, it's everybody in the system who make that process work so that people feel like they had an opportunity to be heard. And really, our office is one of the greatest facilitators of allowing people that opportunity to get to speak to their elected officials or get to have a say in their government. And so we're very proud to facilitate that. And all of this work that we do wouldn't be possible without our amazing employees. As you may note, this last year we had a great distinction of being recognized as one of the top 10 best places to work in Idaho. It's the first time a government office has achieved that recognition. Many government offices have tried, but we feel very appreciative to be recognized for the good work that we do and the culture that we've provided in our office. You've mentioned not only our mission statement in terms of building trust, but you've mentioned along the way some of the core values. And I'll talk about it a little later, but I had an opportunity at the beginning of the year to meet with all of my employees to talk about what our values are and what I want them to be focused on. And they include being kind, having empathy, to continue learning, to be open and transparent. You see that through our advocacy for access to information, to be helpful, to innovate, to take chances, to focus on what matters and to enjoy what they do. And you'll see all of those components when you interact with our office. Now I want to get into the depths a little bit, and so let's shift gears as we work through the clerk's office. FY19, looking at our accomplishments this year, one of the biggest themes you'll see throughout our office is just that change was a significant theme for this last year, beginning first and foremost with the change at the top. After 21 years, our leader, Chris Rich, that is a bobblehead. We do have our commemorative Chris Rich bobbleheads. That may also be reflective in our character in our office. I have one sitting on my desk, says, "What would Chris Rich do?" So the shift from Chris to me, certainly there's a lot of continuity. I had the great fortune to work for him for 10 years, but at the same time, there's an opportunity for change and for new leadership along the way. And so you'll see that as we kind of continue through looking at our office. First, I want to highlight the courts division. One of the most significant changes is the leadership change there as well. After 40 years, Phyllis Morris decided to retire. I have to let that sink in, but I'll let you, Commissioner Laciando, think about what 40 years may mean in this system. She is the one who could go back. I remember right before she retired, we had a really sticky case where we needed to find a record. We had a public records request, and it was a case, I believe, for 1894, and someone was trying to figure out where to track this thing down. And Phyllis's comment when they brought it to her, she's like, "Well, if I remember back in 1894," and I was like, "Phyllis, only you remember back to 1894. And coincidentally, she was able to identify that the court was in Boise County at the time, and so we could hunt down where the record was for that particular case. We're very, very fortunate to have filling her role, Margaret Mulchin. Margaret, here to my left. Not only has she done an extraordinary job stepping into that role, a year ago, as you can see from this photo, she was recognized in the Idaho State of the Judiciary Address for her work in the implementation of Odyssey. Margaret's done an amazing job and has already brought her touch to the office. The courts division is our largest function. About 141 of our total employees work in the court system. It's amazing how many of them are working truly behind the scenes, because you guys can come to work every day and not even know they're here in the building, because they truly are working back behind the scenes, making a lot of things possible. In addition to the leadership changes, we've had other great accomplishments. One of the big ones is online payment options for public records requests. We have really streamlined public records requests in our office. We handle easily 12,000 public records requests just through the court system every year. We've been able to work with IT to develop not only an online form, so I think you guys have been looking at public records requests a lot. It has streamlined making sure we get all the right information up front, so we know exactly what the person's looking for and not going back and forth with them. And then beyond that, what we've been able to do is allow people to pay for them. So no one has to come in, do anything. Someone submits it, we figure out what it is, send them the bill, and we process that transaction easily. This really helps people, not just in our community, but people out of state who need, like, to get a medical license, you need to get your past court history, and we can ship it to any of the states easily and quickly. Also, within the courts division, we have other functions as well. So we also oversee the court functions over at juvenile, as well as we have the court assistance office that provides assistance to pro se litigants, specifically in civil and family law cases. And then we have our records retention center. Last year, the Records Retention Center was able to purchase a machine to digitize microfilm. That is nerdy in our world, right? But over this last year, 2,600 rolls of microfilm have been digitized. They're a dedicated team out at Benjamin. All they do is scan stuff. They just sit there and they do it all the time. Since Odyssey's implementation, they've scanned 4.6 million pages. Since they started going digital, so it used to be a microfilm shop. We switched in 2009 from microfilm to digitization. They've scanned 35 million images over there and are continually scanning many, many more. And as I mentioned earlier during these proceedings, we still have about a decade's worth of work just to get through all the files that we have on the shelves. But it's provided huge opportunities, especially in this building, having that dedicated team. And they're a huge part of the court system because sometimes a case may come up and a judge all of a sudden needs a case from 1970. This team can quickly grab that case, digitize it, and have it ready in Odyssey so that the judge, when they arrive at their bench, wouldn't know any different in terms of whether it was just filed today or it came from the past. All of that digitization has led to a significant shift in our office. You guys haven't even really seen the significance. This is an image of our file shelves that used to be down right behind the counter. We had a sea of them. It has all shifted and changed to cubicles. One of our major projects from last year was the implementation of our cubicles and providing office space for our staff. I think it's worth noting this is a huge accomplishment for us because, as you know, I'll talk about the admin space later, but space is just becoming a huge constraint in this building. In the past 2 years, I've stuffed multiple employees literally in closets to give them space to work. And Judge Moody and I over this past year had to work out where she asked if she could move some law clerks down into our space in cubicles because she had ran out of all the space on her floor. Next up is the Recorder's division of our office. Heather Luther, I think right over here, oversees our Recorder's office. You're familiar with Heather. As I mentioned, they handle all the property records. In 2018, you can see the numbers in terms of the documents that they recorded and processed. We also handled 3,500 marriage licenses. I needed an image here, so yes, this is the wedding cake topper from my wedding. You can determine what that says about me. As well as 854.
Lovely wife.
Yeah, absolutely. A very patient, loving wife, as a matter of fact. And 854 alcohol licenses that you all got to see renewed here just recently. The auditor's office, I mentioned, they're the CFO for the county, overseen by Kathleen Graves, and with Tim Sturgis supporting her. I think one of the big things to recognize them that easily can get glossed over, if you're ever walking down the hall towards my office and you pass there, is you'll see on the wall all these gold plaques lining the wall between their offices. Those are recognition from the Government Financial Officers Association for the 30 years in which they have been recognized for their excellence in financial reporting. We're unique as a government entity in that we produce our own annual financial report. And so this is a huge success to them. And I can tell you, Kathleen would be in tears if she did not get a 31st year here coming up because it's important recognition. Also within the auditors division, we added a new internal auditor, Ryan Thurman, who's also here in the audience. I think you've had the opportunity to meet him. Ryan's getting up to speed and on board. He is yet to earn a nickname like his predecessor, Don the Hatchet Burns, but he is going to earn his way there. We are also in the midst of the RFP process for our new payroll system. As you know, you'll see that come up because it's going to overlap the years in terms of the finances of it. Just to answer some of the questions that come up, where we are in that, we've done the RFP. We're now going to be doing demos here at the end of the month. When you are in BOE, there's going to be staff doing demonstrations of that system. It's a major component of what we do, and it's one of those systems when you consider like critical. It may not be critical immediately to the services we provide, but without paying people, many of our services are going to suffer. So all our employees consider it fairly critical. Also, I'll highlight this here. We recently rolled out ACH payments to employees. So we have direct deposit for payroll, right? That's existed for quite some time. What this is now is when you get your reimbursements or you get your per diem, things like that, we now have made it possible so that we can electronically transfer those funds as well and just deposit them straight in somebody's bank account. This is a big step. This actually fits. I'll talk about 2-year plans here in a minute, but it was one of the initiatives that the auditor's office came up with, and they're already working heavily on their 2-year plan, and this is a piece of that. Next is our elections division. As I think you are intimately aware, we had a general election. We even elected 2 new commissioners during that process. We had record turnout for a non-presidential year. 192,000 people voted that election. That's not a small feat. It takes a lot of work to pull all of that together with all the temporary staff and everything, the supplies and the locations that we run. It was a very big success on our part. Additionally, this past legislative session, I've been intimately involved in pushing for campaign finance reform in this state. We did pass a big omnibus bill in terms of campaign financial reporting. And so starting next year, we'll see increases in terms of the frequency of filing. And actually one of the biggest successes, which I fought very hard for, is it will become a centralized database. Now everyone reporting will be able to report in one stop, do it online, and it doesn't matter whether you're at ACHD, you're at the county, or at the state, we'll all report to the same place. Right now there's 71 different entities that handle campaign finance reporting in the state, and this will consolidate it so we have easy, quick access, and access to the data, which I think is a big thing for public transparency in the process.
Madam Chair, Phil, what will happen to the historical campaign finance information? Will that still live wherever county, city, et cetera, or will that also get migrated over to a centralized database?
That's a great question. I'm going to say right now it's going to live where it's at. There's a lot of that will depend on the leadership of the Secretary of State's office. I think first and foremost where we are, it'll be implementation moving forward. I'm even uncertain whether they'll integrate their own data into it. So it's a much further step to integrate our data. I think in Ada County, we take all of the PDF data and turn it into data, but I think we're the only county that actually does that at this point in time. So it's a major lift to be able to transition that information.
Okay.
One of the other things, just because you guys don't have the history here, I know you're familiar with, but as our mobile voting efforts in 2016, we implemented mobile voting. The most recent recognition of this, where I think it's truly been a success, is not just the participation and the heavy use. The lines we experience wherever we go are enormous because it attracts voters like flies, which was its intention. But last month, I participated in a call with our election staff with Los Angeles County. LA County called us to see about mimicking what we were doing. It's quite a note when you have the largest county in the United States call you to say, you mentioned, hey, have we looked at best practices elsewhere? When you are the best practice, they're looking at, we have our 1 unit. They're going to be rolling out 150 units throughout the county, and they're going to mirror 3 different methods that have been used around the country as they do it, Ada County being one of the ones that they're considering. So I think that's an awesome recognition for our elections team. Next up is Indigent Services. Indigent Services is overseen by Katie Reed. I think you guys are all familiar with Katie. I worked very hard to poach Katie, and I'm very proud that I did. You can ask Mark Peterson. He regrets it, but I am extremely pleased. Katie's been doing an awesome job and has truly hit the ground running. I think one of her even apprehensions was that there was a lot to take on. And I sat her down and said, let's not waste too much time, let's get going. And she really did take the bull by the horns and has really run with it. Specifically, moving indigent hearings from the commissioner's room down to the Indigent Services office. We actually built a room for this purpose and have retrofitted it. to meet all of the needs. It's been a huge in terms of our focus, in terms of serving the community, right? Rather than traveling different locations, it makes it way more, way simpler for the participants involved. Also, it has really led us to one of the other big changes in that office, which is the cradle to grave process. Tony Geddes mentioned vertical representation in the public defender's office. To a certain degree, we're trying to do the same process over at Indigent. It used to be the same application would be handled through multiple employees. The person who handled appeals was different than the person who handled the application, which was different than the person who processed it when it came in. We have worked as a major goal is ultimately to reduce the number of appeals by really getting everything right on the front end. And we're seeing that now. I think you guys are seeing that in terms of the number of appeals that you guys are already hearing. And it's because of the dedicated work of Katie and her Indigent team, and then allowing the same person to be the one interacting both with the patients as well as with the hospitals all the way through the process. So there's that familiarity. And then at an appeal hearing, when you're asking questions, you have the right resource there in front of you. And it's been a huge change, and it's been a multi-year effort on our part. And so kudos to Katie for making that happen.
Madam Chair, Phil, I just want to give a special shout out to Katie and her team in breaking in 2 new commissioners through the indigent hearing process, and just been so impressed by the dedication and the grace and the kindness that you show people really in, I think, probably the most vulnerable moments that we see. So thank you very much.
It's remarkable. Thank you.
Now, I really wish for this next
Bill, I have a
piece.
question for you.
Oh, yeah, please.
So we don't have a hard copy, so I don't know where you're getting to in your presentation.
Yep.
If it's appropriate to talk about the budget for indigent services.
I'll
here,
come
or
back
you're
to
gonna come
each
back?
division for budget stuff. Yeah, so we'll have, I'll come back to them. For this next piece, I really wish Liberta Jones was here. She oversaw the finance team over at Indigent. And as we will talk about changes at Indigent, like many, she went to the Department of Health and Welfare recently, but it was really her persistence and dedication that made a major change possible. We've now implemented online payments for medical expenses over at Indigent. So to put that into perspective, prior to Liberta's work, this is how we have handled finances. Debbie is cringing behind me. This is a coupon book that once someone signed a promissory note, we would give them a coupon book and say, don't forget to make your regular payments of $25. And then they would take their coupon book and leave. And we would hope that these people, which you can appreciate, some of the people who come before us, would hold on to that coupon book and be diligent about paying us each month. And needless to say, that wasn't the most successful method. So Liberta, through her efforts, has built a finance team that follows up and works with applicants and truly works with them. Like you would think somebody trying to collect on debts owed, that's an awkward relationship, but often they receive huge thank yous because we really work with them. We recognize we're there not just to collect finances, but we're part of the whole system in terms of caring for these people in our community. But really a huge sea change was rather than just sending the coupon book, we can now set people up for recurring payments before they leave so that automatically funds are transferred and people stay up and on time with their payments. And the tools that we've implemented go everything from paying online to text messages to other things that we can implement in terms of working with people to meet them where they are. And so it's a huge change, a huge kudos to her. Similarly, when we took over Indigent Services a while back, the only collection efforts were using a collections company. And even the collections company didn't really try very hard because the population we work with, it's a really difficult population to collect from. We terminated that contract when we took over and we built our own finance team that Liberta has headed. And I'm proud to say, like, we started off, we used to not really book much of any revenue in terms of department. Each year, I have increased it by $200,000. So we started at $200,000 and then $400,000 to $600,000. And this year, we're easily on pace to break $1 million in terms of the amount of money we collected. Every year, Liberta's cringed as I keep ratcheting up the goal. But you've talked about performance metrics, and if you don't set the bar high, you'll never meet it. And so it's a huge kudos to them for all the work that the finance team has done. And then also, as I mentioned, we've added a new function within our office that's now housed in Indigent Services, which is the Board of Community Guardians. I referenced that earlier, but I'm proud to introduce Marika Dudek, I'm going to butcher her last name. This is Marika's first day. So what a perfect opportunity to show up to work so you can be recognized in the budget presentation. So she's getting thrown in. We're very fortunate to have her coming on board. She actually has past experience working in our program here in Ada County, as well as working in a similar program in the city of Portland. And so her skill set, her background is a perfect fit for what we're doing, especially with the sudden transition and all the things that we're going through.
Welcome.
All right, real quick, our admin division. As I mentioned, we have change in leadership team, not only myself, but Trent Triple stepping on board as my chief deputy. We've also added our new communications specialist, Chelsea Caratini. Chelsea does work with some external communications similar to what your PIO, and will work very closely with the PIO, but also is really heavily focused on internal communication with our office. Our annual satisfaction survey, we do a very in-depth, detailed satisfaction survey of our employees. That's how we get the recognition that we do. Always emphasizes we can do better to communicate. And so we're putting, you'll see that even in the budget, we're really focusing on that as we move forward. Also, I want to highlight just some of the things that we've been able to do to start this year off. The very first and foremost is one of the unique things of the elected officials is all of the employees who work on my behalf need to be sworn in as deputies and deputized. And so Judy and many others got the opportunity at the beginning of the year, not just to be deputized, but I actually spent an hour with everybody talking about the history of the clerk's office, myself, because you might as well know who you're working for, but most importantly, walking through our mission and our values and why they're important and giving examples. I think that has really helped set the tone. And I think, Diana, your father even got to hear at least half of my presentation as we move through. And I think it was a really good start to the year. Also within our office, we have committees that our leadership team is broken up into. The committees do everything from employee recognition, professional development, customer service, as well as we have what you see here, which is the Bureau of Frivolity. Our very own Mike Ponanen, who's sitting behind me, heads up the Bureau. That is a photo from our office barbecue last summer. We are constantly, the Bureau of Frivolity does everything from surprise ice cream sundaes on a Friday to Easter egg hunts, just little things. You know, we recognize in government, being able to compensate everyone at the highest levels isn't our strength, right? But we can provide an environment that people enjoy coming to work every day and enjoy the people they're with. And the Bureau really helps us achieve that within our office by making it a fun place. One of the other things I really want to highlight, and I think Commissioner Kenyon, this goes to the heart of one of the things you're always asking about, is at the end of January, we did an offsite retreat with our leadership team. All our managers and supervisors got together and we developed 2-year plans. These are where we do goal setting. So we determined some objectives for each of the divisions, as well as key performance indicators. Everybody had to work through this process. Jim Everett came and spoke and helped us work through that. We've seen success. So in 2014, I just want to highlight, we had a rough general election. It wasn't necessarily rough on the public side, but rough on the internal side. And Chris and I were committed to never repeating that again. And we, at that point, set out our first 2-year plan. And some of the things that we included, we just sat down at a restaurant writing down ideas, but included things like a mobile voting unit, something that we were able to implement, greater accessibility for voters, an elections director position. David Levine serves as our elections director and oversees that. It's a position we didn't used to have. And most importantly, in terms of performance metrics, when we set out to do it, we knew we needed to change how we vote in Ada County. We were getting too large and getting frustrated. So if you can just think back to November, historically, you would have had to wait until 8 a.m. the next morning to know whether you had succeeded or not. That was the normal course of business for our operation.
I actually walked into that room thinking I wouldn't know till 8 a.m. Only to be surprised.
To be
at about
pleasantly surprised.
10 o'clock, exactly.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
When we set out our 2-year plan, we set kind of a big, hairy, audacious goal. We said we want to be done by midnight for the 2016 election. And in 2016, we finished at 12:15 a.m., cutting about 8 hours off of our counting time, which was actually 2/3 of the total time it used to take us. And that's really through innovation and huge efforts on our part to just transform how we vote in the county and make it seamless to the voters, right? So it's been a huge success. So what we did is took that same idea we were in elections and now have done it throughout the entire office. And so things like the ACH payments that we're seeing, those are examples of our 2-year plans being implemented by our office staff. And then finally, a big effort that we did is we added a new gym for all the county employees. So we reconfigured indigent services not just to move hearings over there, but also turned our old conference room into a gym. It was a partnership with the Health Trust. We provided the space. The clerk's office actually funded the vast majority of the gym facility and the retrofitting. The Health Trust provides all of the equipment in the gym. I think that's one of those huge benefits for everybody. Just, more we can do for employees here and to make them comfortable where they're here. Also, I think to highlight, it was a big part of trying to figure out many of the different needs. Tony Geddes mentioned at the same time we were doing this, we've given up a portion of our office down in the courts so that he can expand his office so that we can all shove into this big puzzle here within the courthouse. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then finally, one of our huge recognitions for admin, this first year, we just figured, hey, we'll just see how we do. And one of our goals is to constantly be one of the best places to work. And hopefully we can work our way up the ranks to #1 someday. All right, shifting gears again, going to the questions again. Now, moving forward, I'm going to talk about our specific budget request for the FY20 budget. As I mentioned, we are the second largest office in the county and the second largest budget. You can see our total request is $24 million. It's broken out. We're a really odd one, so you're not going to see that $24 million in any of your materials directly. You can easily add it up and get there. We're unique. Most offices and departments, all except for pretty much, I think Weed and Pest, maybe the other one, are all within one fund. We, because of our disparate functions and our broad scope, cover multiple funds. So we are located both in the district court fund, the general fund, we have a consolidated elections fund, and an indigent fund. Trent and I have the pleasure of trying to keep track of where all the money is and where we need it and what's going on. And many of these, the indigent fund and district court are specific focused funds for their purposes. And so we have to keep track of what we're doing where throughout that. But you can see the total request by fund. Moving forward, I'm going to actually talk about it by division because that's an easier way to kind of capture what we're actually trying to achieve with the money that we're asking for. First up is the court through the district court fund. We share the district court fund with the trial court administrator's office to provide support to the district court. As you are acutely aware, we have 3 new judges coming on board. I attended the hearings at the legislature to support Judge Moody for those new judges. It's definitely a need when you look at the volume in the cases that we have, so we're fortunate to get those. But with new judges comes new personnel. I'll highlight, we're asking for 4 in-court positions. There's 4 positions. Each judge needs an in-court clerk. That's the person who supports them immediately in court as well as inside, right outside their chambers. But also we have a number of support in-court positions because of the number of judges. I think we'll be hitting 40 judges with the addition of these 3. We need to have people for coverage and support, whether that's supporting them by handling paperwork behind the scenes or any of these support positions can also show up in court on behalf of those in courts.
I have a request.
Please.
For future planning purposes, we've seen the costs of the bringing on the new judges throughout the presentations, whether it's the PA's office or public defender's office, IT, operations, and now the clerks. I would be interested in knowing what the overall all-in costs of bringing 3 new judges on. If you could put that together for me, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I don't have it immediately. I think we already
Oh, no.
pulled it together. So
great.
yeah, anticipating that exact question. Yep.
Thanks.
One of the things I'll highlight is when I came on board, it used to be the rule of thumb for the clerk's office was to add 2.5 new positions per judge when it came on, because the judges aren't just supported by the in-courts, but the people downstairs support them as well. We've shifted away from that, which is why you don't see that many positions being asked for. We really base our position requests on case volume. And so the number of cases hasn't necessarily changed. It's just the physical number of judges. So we're managing and absorbing a portion of that in our support staff downstairs and not adding any additional personnel there in this request. I'll highlight in terms of our overall budget, that is our only supplemental request, is that $226,000 for those 4 positions. Everything else, we've had a pretty conservative approach to trying to keep within the resources that we've been allocated in the past. So these next items I'm highlighting are really just things that we're accomplishing with the budget. There's some of the information there. This fits within our base budget. So for example, at RRC, we're adding some temporary help. So when there's surges, RRC doesn't just, that's the Records Retention Center, sorry, before I use too much lingo. They don't just support the court in digitizing theirs, but we've digitized things for the prosecutor's office, for parks, for the assessor's office. We do a lot of digital scanning. So when another office or department needs assistance, we have a ready crew, ready and willing to help. They're also looking at upgrading their scanners. When you scan 35 million pages, you can imagine scanners get worn out over time, right? There's some special salary adjustments in the courts, one for our accountant position, as well as one of the leads that we have within the office. And then I think one of the bigger things that you'll see here is we have $43,000 allocated to a remodel. We've been going through with the change from the files. I showed the cubicles. So the cubicles have gone away, or the cubicles are there because the files have gone away. We're also, right now, we have a construction project turning our old appeals room into a break room. One of the things, we have 141 people working in the courts, and we don't have a break room over there. Often, if you ever look, when you're wandering through the main hallway, you'll see many times some of my staff sitting on the pews taking their breaks, right? Or you can see people eating their lunch out in their cars in the triangle lot. And so one of the shortcomings of this building has always been, from the day it opened, was adequate break space for the number of people in this facility. And so it's one of the things that we're trying to compensate for. I don't know 5 or 6 years ago, we had facilitated the upgrades of the break room that's right off the hall here, is one of the things, just trying to provide better space for our employees. And then finally, one of the other things I just thought worth highlighting, we're upgrading the locks on our vaults. One of the things we have a dedicated room to the storage of evidence. Just like sheriff's office handles evidence, once it's admitted into court, our office is the custodian of that. And so we have a dedicated room, has drugs and guns and everything else that we need to make sure to keep secure. We currently have a system that keeps track of who comes and goes, but it's now at its end of life, and we need to upgrade that as well. Oh, and it's worth noting, in particular, this budget as submitted is actually, aside from those supplementals for the 4 new judges, the remainder of the budget is down from what it was previous year, and that's because we've had construction that we've been able to cut. In the Auditor's division, the most noteworthy piece here is the payroll CIP. I kind of already mentioned where we are with that. One thing to note with that CIP, it is, I think currently in the paperwork that you have, it's actually at one point, it's at $1,750,000. We've requested that actually be increased to $2 million. Initially, when we had submitted it a year ago, it was up high, and then during the budget process, I voluntarily gave up a portion of the funding for it because of the needs, and we didn't know as much at that point in time. Now that we have done the RFPs, we know exactly what the quotes are that have come in, and if we're going to do this, we need the additional funding. This isn't $2 million on top of what was allocated for this current fiscal year. This is just, we need to rebudget it because there's a decent chance we won't spend that money until October 1 because of the process that we're going through with procurement. So we just need to make sure that the money is available so we can cover this number 1 priority in terms of the extraordinary operating expenses. Some other things to note, these are within the base budget. We have market adjustments for our accountant positions totaling $14,000. That's covering that's not an accountant, that's covering multiple accountants within our office. And then also just a unique thing that we're having to adjust to in our office, change is the theme, is we have a couple of retirements. So we're anticipating a retirement in the auditor's office as well as in elections. And in order to cover both the vacation payouts as well as to provide some overlap, so we have some money set aside to hire replacements in advance so that they can do some training because there are some hyper-specialized positions. We have some money allocated to be able to do that.
Before you
Yep.
move away from that, a couple questions here.
Please.
Excuse me. I know in the CIP we have electronic poll books reflected somewhere.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that, and where is that?
How about I'll get to it when I talk about elections. Is that okay?
Okay.
But yes, happy to speak to it. The Recorders Division, one of the things that's really noteworthy of the Recorders Division, it's kind of one of the steady divisions within our office, quietly doing their work. Even when you see it at your meetings, it's one of those things that kind of we slide right through during any of the meetings. And they generally don't have many needs, but they do provide an enormous amount of revenue. This portion, the general fund portion of our office, does not rely on very many property taxes. It's largely supported through recording revenue. Because we record so many documents, we have a major revenue stream. It's also where we've been able to pool up some money that's dedicated for recording and the advancements in recording. And so we have two small special salary adjustments. One of those is someone who's increased their duties, and then the other is just we noticed that there was some inequity in terms of what the pay ought to be relative to others, so we're making a correction. And then we have number 8 in terms of the extraordinary operating expenses is the request to complete the digitization of historic records. So you can see already there's money set aside of $500,000 from recording fees. One, we're asking your permission to use that money for this purpose. And then additionally, we're requesting another almost $400,000 to complete the total process. What this is it was a 3-phase program that we entered into. We started back in 2011, where we took all of the microfilm, so all the microfilm records for the recorder's office, and had them digitized. That was the first step, was having them digitized. The next step, 2 steps, were never completed. The current digitized, what they did is they created, imagine a roll of microfilm that has, I don't even know, thousands of documents on it. What they did is took one big picture. So if you took one JPEG and it's just one really long JPEG, that's currently what we have. And so if you want to find a particular document, you get to scroll through that image until you hope you land on the document you're looking for. What this next phase would do is we'd have somebody go through, they would break each of the pages into separate documents and index them so that they could be added into our recording system, because right now they're separate. And just in terms of long-term archive, our office is responsible for keeping these records in perpetuity. And so we need to be able to integrate them into our existing system, and that's what this funding would do. I'll note, when this went before the Transformation Board, Transformation Board's recommendation was to fund half of it, fund the portion that we have the funding set aside for, but they didn't see it as high of a priority in terms of that additional funding, but that still is our request.
So this is showing up in the extraordinary
Yep.
budget, but the other one you said was also in the extraordinary budget, but you also had CIP by it. So the CIP.
Oh, that was an error on my part, on the CIP part.
Okay.
That's because I get confused with the CIP. This is the first year we have the 2 pots, and
Okay,
just
don't confuse me.
be patient with me.
Phil, before we move forward on recorder, I know you spent some time at the legislature with some potential legislation regarding recording fees. Could you speak a little bit to what that would have done and
Yeah.
what the goal is there?
Yeah, happy to do it, and I hope to revive it in some form. It's unfortunate how I did spend quite a bit of time. It was one of the highest priorities for the IAC as well, is to change how we do recording fees. So historically, recording fees have been based on the number of pages, right? So it used to be $10 for the first page, $3 for every subsequent page, and that's just how it was. And so what ended up happening is you'd have to physically count all the pages. Now, mind you, pages don't actually, there was a point in time that may have mattered in terms of work, but now that it's all electronically filed and digital, that doesn't matter, it just creates work. And so Martin Bilbao had first spearheaded on behalf of the title companies to change it. And so he created, we'll call them semi-flat fees, where different types of documents had set fees, right? So I'm gonna get them wrong. I wanna say a deed or deed of trust, I'm gonna get it wrong which one it is, was $45. Some documents are $15. What I was trying to do was consolidate it all to truly one flat fee. So no longer would it be based on the pages. It would have been $27. Doesn't matter what you're recording. If it's 1 page or 1,000 pages, you pay $27 because the work on our side, which is what the fee is for, is the same. And then also what that does is creates predictability for the industry. Ever since the housing crisis, I know that seems like an odd thing to associate with, there's been a real heavy pressure on the financial industry to have full disclosure at closing so that you have honest upfront, this is what it's going to cost you for your home. Recording fees are one of the last things that they can get disclosure because recording fees happen after closing. They can't predict them because it's based on, we don't know how many pages and other things this is going to be. And so it was going to streamline it both for the consumer, for the title companies, and for our office, and probably actually save a lot of money across both because right now we end up going back and forth rejecting documents unnecessarily over a silly fee structure rather than substance. Elections. So getting to elections, this is the combination. So we have, as you see, $1.4 million of elections is funded out of the general fund. This is going to be, I had this conversation with a senator during the session, and he said, no, you must be mistaken. And I said, no, I'm not. The county pays for all federal, state, and county elections. The state pays for all municipal, school district, and other small taxing district elections. And I know that sounds backwards, but that's how it works. And this
So as related to that, would you mind going back one?
I love that you arch your arm when you do it.
Sorry.
No,
So
you're
I'm
okay.
looking, it's not under recorder. I'm looking under the, well, no, never mind. It is auditor, recorder, elections. And then you've
No.
got consolidated elections.
Elections
So
is
it's,
separate, yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but one of the line items here is the presidential preference primary temp payroll.
Yep.
So I just want to, sorry, I'm being told to speak into my microphone, so you can record this. I would just want to make sure I'm tracking this. So this relates to one of our parties choosing to hold a separate presidential primary from the typical May elections.
Okay.
Where's this line item coming from, this presidential preference? primary?
Yeah, we're on the right spot. I have it up here as well. So let me first. So this is confusing because we're operating from my side of it. I'm operating one big function, and it all kind of overlaps.
Right, I understand that,
When
but
we
the
do
funding
it,
streams are.
yeah, when we do a
Okay.
consolidated election and a general election, they happen at the same time, on the same day, on the same ballot,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the funding sources are different. And one of the things that we did with the elections budget is one of the first things I want to highlight. We did a massive overhaul from the ground up of the elections budget this year. So I tasked David Levine, our elections director, to work with Tim Sturgis, who has a background in cost accounting, and they went down to every individual, every piece of paper. It's actually very impressive if you look at, don't do this, but if you were to go look at the budget detail and the notes that they have in the financial system, it's impressive because they were tasked with really breaking down what does it cost us to run an election. No guesses. Like if we pull out a poll worker, what's this, or add new poll workers, what's it going to cost us? And so they've broken it down. And one of the things that we have to do is go through and say, what are we anticipating the elections coming up? We have a presidential cycle next year. We always see a spike in our budget because of the presidential election. So one of the things we did is we balanced our budget a little bit. Some of the notes that you see on your sheet, you'll see there's like transfers of positions between the two. So it just shows up funny on yours because all it is we're just moving money between we're not moving money, we're moving people and costs between the two funds.
So we have one tab with the budget that's just elections, but then elections is also rolled into the clerk auditor budget
Recorder.
as well. So
Yep.
we'll spend some time after these presentations to
Yeah.
make sure that we
The
get the
good,
bigger picture of
Sure,
all
the
these
good
separate
news-
pieces and parts.
the good news on that, it's probably more important that I understand how it's working. This is all funded within the base budgets. It's really us moving money to make sure we're appropriately funding everything. The one big thing to your question, Commissioner Laciando, the presidential preference primary, it is an election. It's a unique election that it's added to our schedule. So next March, we'll have a presidential preference primary. It's my understanding at this time that most likely both political parties will be participating in it. I don't anticipate a huge difference. There will be a cost difference, but not huge, adding the second party, because most of our base costs remain the same. We still have to set up the same polling places and do everything regardless of which political party is present. That election is funded, it's a reimbursement by the state. This is that thing that you saw come up during the legislative session, is making sure the state, they are statutorily mandated to reimburse us for our expenses. So we've budgeted $422,000 to conduct that election. I think that gives you a sense too, just how much it costs for us to run elections. They're not small undertakings.
So let me make sure I'm tracking here. You
Yep.
just stated a little bit ago that we pay for federal, state, and county elections, but in this case, because the state added a primary that they didn't have to add, or not the state, a certain political party, we're being reimbursed for that by the state?
Yes, it is, as a general rule, what I had said earlier is absolutely true. The presidential preference primary is the unique instance
Okay.
where the
does
state
reimburse
does a
us.
reimbursement. It's the only instance where we do a reimbursement. Consolidated elections, we actually get.
That's on the department revenues. It shows 100%.
Yes.
Okay, and then on going back to the auditor recorder elections, that's showing, I think, 89% is also through fees or reimbursements.
So the first one where it's showing 100%, that's the consolidated election fund, and that's the fund that comes directly from the state.
Yep.
I'll say basically as a grant. It's not a grant, but we get the money from the state.
Okay.
And then built into our revenue on the clerk auditor election side is the reimbursement money. So for every expense we made for the presidential preference primary, we entered a revenue as well.
Okay.
So whatever it costs us, we'll be seeking money back. That also creates an unusual situation where it gives us a unique opportunity to accomplish a couple things related to elections out of that, because of that revenue stream that comes up. And if you, we're pulling together some of the information you requested, Commissioner Kenyon, on historical trends, and you'll actually see in these years we have the presidential preference primary, our budget has a spike, and it's because of the president. It goes up because of this election, and then goes right back down because of this.
And I just want to clarify my comments. I don't particularly care that much whether there is or isn't a primary. I just want to make sure we weren't paying for it since it wasn't our decision.
That was a really big, for all the political reasons that you identified,
Yeah.
right? When the Republican Party chose to go down this path, that was a major political debate because no county is in a position to absorb that additional election, especially when we're already conducting the state primary election, which will take place in May. Going to your other question, number 6 on the extraordinary operating expenses is electronic poll books. I will say from the get-go when I started this budget process, that is the clerk's office #1 goal, is the electronic poll books. I know it doesn't appear that way now in here, but it's the $445,000. What this is if you think about when you vote, you go sign a paper poll book when it comes in. This is changing it to a laptop effectively, or iPad there at the polls. It's been a request we've had in the past. We've done an RFI in the past. So we have a lot of information about it. It just has never risen up to funding. I would emphasize that it's much more important now than ever before. And that's in large part because I learned a lot last May. I don't know if you guys have seen this graph before. You don't need to necessarily read the detail, but this is the historical trend in terms of participation among the Democratic Party in their primary. And you'll notice that last bar is substantially larger than all the rest, right? Not only was turnout more than 3 times what it had been 4 years prior, but the turnout exceeded what the state turnout was 4 years prior, just in Ada County. I think some of you are familiar. We ran out of ballots during that election. It was a stressful, challenging event for myself. Heck, I even called Judge Moody when she was in a hotel in Alaska, trying to help work out some of the challenges. It was in that moment that the prioritization for electronic poll books, because one of the things it will allow us to do is not just handle the records accurately and transmit information, but what we're looking at, it'll give us real-time communication with the polls in terms of what turnout is. We really struggle right now that we're relying on our temporary poll workers to be our main conduit. We have 150 locations that we're running simultaneously out of one little room. And so we'll call or text throughout the day. But inevitably, when we have situations like this, Some people panic when they give away their first ballot, even though they've got more than enough. Other people call us and they're like, hey, I'm down to my last ballot. What do I do? And you're like, well, you call us an hour earlier before you're down to your last ballot. And so this will give us that insight without having to rely on the poll workers. It really, at the size and scope of our operation, it's becoming crucial for us to do it, let alone to give us a lot of tools like if someone shows up to the wrong precinct, we can pull up on a map where they need to go and really help the voter in a lot of ways. Speaking of helping voters, one of the other things we've added, two things that we've added in our budget, this is again in the base budget, but this last year we've upgraded our notification cards. We've had different things working with voters to communicate when we make polling place changes or when someone registers to vote for the first time. What this does is provides nicer cards that we can send somebody. It's still just a piece of paper like card stock, but it's better communication, more information to the voter on where they vote and when. And then also we're actually going to be piloting this fall a mail ballot tracking program. So for the people who get absentee ballots, we're going to be working with a company to do a pilot to allow people to go look and see what's the status of my ballot, right? Like, is it on the way? There's a bunch of different phases. Kind of like if you order pizza from Domino's, you can kind of track which phase it's in. Just like ordering pizza from Domino's, you can now do that with elections. Any other questions about elections?
Can you get pizza with your ballot, though?
You can't get a discount. That's a violation of
Because
federal
when
law.
you say food truck voting,
I know,
I have
it's a
high
misnomer.
expectations.
I know. Our admin budget, the one thing we moved our communication specialist position. This year it's not in the admin, so it's being moved in. You'll see that noted. And then also we have $15,000 for a communication system that we're working on. This is a system for us to communicate internally with our employees beyond just email, trying to make sure we can share information. So it's actually one of the challenges our office has is we cover numerous locations, right? So we have employees in this building, over at Indigent, over at Benjamin, over at Juvenile, and so just trying to keep in contact with those employees. So this is part of that
Which one of your many budgets is this line item
This
reflected
is, see, I told you it's tricky. This is being in the general fund, which is the Auditor Recorder Elections Fund, is where it shows up. And I actually think Kathleen and I's numbers don't jive, but it all works out in the end.
Can you show me where it is? I'm still not seeing it. The communication specialist?
Well, maybe I don't, let's see. It's there, right, Kathleen? I don't know.
I'm sure it is.
It's only going to show the difference. We're moving funding. This is moving from the district court. It's not a new position. This is an existing position, moving the majority of the funding from the district court over to the admin budget. So it's a shift between the two budgets. I don't know if it shows, I actually don't have the sheet that you're looking at right now.
It shows one position being transferred from
Clerk.
clerk with additional increase, 72,309. That's the
Yep.
position.
Still don't see it. We'll get back with you
Sure.
so we can
Yeah.
wade through the
When
details.
I move around, I can definitely show you.
Okay.
Okay, indigent services. There's a lot up in the air with indigent services. I've kind of anticipated questions today as it relates to this budget specifically. So as you are both aware, Medicaid expansion will have a direct and significant impact on the indigent services operation. Indigent provides that determining eligibility for the current program. I think one of the things, so right now, what the path forward looks like, and we've met with all of our employees and had this conversation with them as well. Through December 31st, the county will be continuing the indigent services program. What that means is anybody who receives treatment at any of our facilities that is eligible, we will cover any of the services rendered up to December 31st. Assuming those people, which the majority will be, are eligible for Medicaid, all services provided January 1 and beyond will be covered by the state through Medicaid. That means even the same patient could have half of their claim covered by indigent, half of their claim covered by Medicaid, which means also that we need to be fully staffed and functioning well beyond December 31st. So that the date of service will be December 31st. The processing of the application will come over the months following, just as it currently does. So we need to be fully staffed to handle that case volume well into the spring. We do anticipate then in the spring starting to look at what does the program look like moving forward and anticipate some significant changes in terms of the program. There are some looming questions in the air in terms of specifically the federal waivers that may be granted to the state that the state's requesting, mental health being a huge one. From everything I hear, they're anticipating that the mental health waiver will be approved, that that's a safer bet. Things like the work requirement are much more questionable. Regardless of whether the waiver for the work requirement comes or not, the vast majority of our work, I anticipate, will be shifting from us to Department of Health and Welfare for the state. We'll be looking. Some of the work that we do will always be retained, right? So we'll still have rent assistance and the other assistance programs, as well as we anticipate having our financial team continue to do their work because all those past owed debts will still exist. And so, yes, over time that might wind down, but it still has a long future too. So as we developed this budget, we initially did it, it's still a budget as though we could operate for the full year moving forward with all these questions in the air. But I honestly don't anticipate us using all $11 million next year. Instead, it'll be this dragged out process starting in the spring to kind of figure out what does the future look like, take care of our employees along the way and everything else. One of the things, because of all that, one of the things I want to highlight in this budget is I added $200,000 in the personnel portion of the budget to provide incentives to employees to stay. So that's something in terms of the details that we can have further discussions between us on what those look like and how we do it. But one of the struggles we're already experiencing, I mentioned that Liberta has already left our office to go to the state. We still have to process a full volume of cases well into next year. And what we are fearful of is that right now, because of all the uncertainty, many of our employees may take off elsewhere, as well as recruiting new employees. It takes a long time to get someone up to speed to be able to handle this work. So it's a huge burden for us to have that turnover. So anything we can do to retain our excellent staff that we have now. And so what we're looking at is trying to provide someone saying, if you stay until X date, you'll receive some additional compensation for helping us out.
Could you, thank you for that, Phil. You have a shift from medical to mental health, and I think that was maybe referring to a question that I have looking at your budget, where you have a decrease based on utilization of the service, and that's indigent medical.
Yep.
And that's a decrease of almost 500,000. And then the line item below that is an increase then with mental health. So you see those medical and mental health costs just flipping. Mm-hmm. Is that due to what's going on out in the community services, or does that have anything to do with how we're tracking and processing or anything internally?
It really has to do with what's going on in the community. We're tracking the trends in terms of what our expenses are that we're paying out, right, with the claims that we're receiving. And we have been for multiple years, ever since the implementation of the ACA, we've slowly seen a trend, as well as our office has made deliberate efforts to manage how we handle applications. Part of the stuff I talked about earlier, our medical claims have been going down because if we work with the hospital, we can work through a lot of those details. But combination of the thing, ACA being a huge influence, medical is slowly trending downward. And as you guys are acutely aware, mental health, specifically those involuntaries, we continue to see going up. And so Anthony does an analysis of all our revenue and our expenses for the big line items. And so this is just us doing the trending and saying, if we keep up with the rate we're going, this is how much money. It's realistically, it's fortunate that it's working out the way it is, that they're
Right,
offsetting
it's
each
going
other.
down, they
That's
are.
more
Yeah,
dumb
that's
luck than it has to do with anything else.
Well, I don't know about that, but
Yeah, but
Madam Chair, so one piece that Phil and I have talked about, and as related to this, this work requirement component is this big sort of question up in the air. And as we discussed with our indigent services folks and certainly our legal team, the vast majority of the folks who are unfortunately having to go in on involuntary mental health holds are not working. And they are not necessarily the people who you or I would hire right away until perhaps they get on Medicaid. So that's something I'm tracking really closely. I'm going to be meeting with a couple of our legislators later this week. And I know Phil has offered to meet with some other folks as well, just to share what kind of impact that potentially has on the county, especially as the state is discussing how much they want to require us to help fund Medicaid expansion. That's another component that's going to be very interesting for the next budget cycle.
An interesting point on that that I anticipate we could see with the work requirement is, so you guys are very familiar with Dr. Damros, right? He does the evaluations to determine medical necessity. We go through that process, assuming the work requirement were in place. I can easily see where we may be contracting with medical professionals to determine ability to work, because there could be a dispute, right? Because we may have a financial interest in the determination of ability to work as you go through it, or at the very least the hospitals, right? And so, again, determining who is the party responsible, us or the state. And so, because right now, that's one of the things I didn't mention, but so Medicaid's moving forward, it's being implemented, that's happening, but right now, because the state's uncertainty, they haven't eliminated, although they've talked about the indigent program. So what's ironic with the work requirement, if you don't meet the requirement, you just will fall under indigent care, right? And so there's a lot to be worked out here.
Phil, I have one more question, maybe my last, but at least
Good luck
one
with
more.
that.
So this is our first experience in going through these presentations, and I've been sort of tracking fund balances and how much folks are using on their fund balance. And yours for this year is 25%. So I just wanted to have you kind of speak to that, why yours is higher than most of the departments, and then you don't have anything that you're anticipating for FY20 for the budget. So just some of the other departments did. So if you could help just clarify that.
Yeah, this actually goes back to a question from day one. This is different, right? So I'm just going to contrast because Darby was up here earlier. When Darby is relying on fund balance, he has some sort of one-time capital expense that he, building a new station, right? And that's exactly what you were just talking about that you'll see. You definitely don't see that here in indigent services. Instead, with indigent services, this is one of those where indigent services is part of the 3% cap. Like, it's part of all the funds that fit under the 3%. Sure. Indigent services has a very healthy fund balance. So to effectively, from the auditor's perspective, we have amassed too much fund balance. There's a point where you're holding too much money. Mm-hmm. So the reason you see it up at 25% is, instead of relying as heavily on property taxes coming in, we've slowly used less and less taxes to fund the operating expenses. So there's no one-time capital. This is ongoing operating. What we've instead been using is splitting down some of our fund balance and shifting those property taxes to the general fund, where the general fund has been in desperate need of more property taxes. So it's a part of a way, an accounting method for us to be able to maintain both a healthy fund for indigent, but also to provide financial assistance to the general fund.
So there will be no fund balance anticipated for FY20?
Right now, we've been doing it every year just because of the way the revenues, and then some of it's the unpredictability. If we don't use all the money, so the two big line items we have would be mental health and medical. If we don't use all that money, it goes back into fund balance. And for the past few years, we've had additional money. And so we're playing this constant balancing so that we don't just keep amassing money in the indigent fund balance without any purpose for it to be spent on.
So, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
May I just,
Sure.
to that point, on your sheet, I don't have anything listed for fund balance. We certainly will use something to support that. Like Phil said, we want to bleed that down.
Sure.
But because that budget doesn't come in as having to be balanced when they turn their budget in, we don't know what that percent is going to be until we finalize it.
Okay.
Unlike Darby, who is supposed to turn in a balanced budget because he's a special taxing district.
Right. Okay.
So that's why in some situations, you'll see that in the current year, and then other situations you won't.
Okay.
But we will be using fund balance. It's just what percent will it be?
I have a big question mark right there, so when we get it, we'll know. Okay, thank you, Kathleen.
You're gaining an appreciation. It's good that I have Kathleen in our office because we have one of the most complicated budgets because we cross so many funds. One of the other things that we have for indigent is we're reclassing one of our account clerks. This is on the finance team to an accountant. It's a basic accountant level, not a senior accountant. So you'll see that reclassification for $14,000. And then I think this is a good opportunity. I have more to present afterwards, but Commissioner Laciando, I don't know if you want to speak towards the bottom two items. One is the New Path, the increase for our payment to New Path, as well as the family homelessness partnership.
So just to sort of back it up a little bit, In my prior role, before coming on board as a commissioner, I was tasked with pulling together a partnership that brought together county, city, hospital systems, a couple of nonprofits, as well as the Idaho Housing and Finance Association in support of the first Housing First development in the state of Idaho. And the reasoning for this, besides certainly the moral challenge of having folks living on the streets, was that an assessment was done out of Boise State that showed that chronic homelessness was costing our community about $53,000 per person per year. And upon further digging into that analysis, the vast majority of those costs are actually accruing at the county level. So we've already heard from a fair amount of them during the course of this budget presentation, whether it's jail, paramedics, indigent services, public defense, et cetera. So we don't need to belabor it, but that was opened this past fall. 40 plus people moved in. They are our most vulnerable residents in Ada County. They also happen to be our most expensive folks. And the way that was determined was utilizing data sharing agreements, I believe also for the first time in the state of Idaho, that pulled together data between hospital systems, criminal justice, indigent services, et cetera. So we could look back in time and see who were, again, the most vulnerable as well as most expensive folks in the county and prioritize them for this intervention. Commissioner Kenyon and I had the opportunity to visit, to tour. I know you had several questions about some of the operating efficiencies and best practices. Just this week, we received recommitments and support letters from St. Luke's and St. Al's to support that ongoing effort. The change involves something that we discussed as a part of that tour, which was really changing from a contracted security company to 24/7 clinical staff. It's one of those elements that Catch and Terry Riley, who are running the supportive services, indicated they thought was going to be a better program model with better outcomes for us going forward. We can expect to see, we being the county, as well as all the partners, the first report out of data sometime this summer. We don't anticipate we'll see significant cost savings until about a year in, once a number of those participants are more stabilized and taking the opportunity to engage with services. So that's a very high level. I think the other critical component that we have discussed as a board and that I am committed to moving forward with the advent of Medicaid expansion, there's a significant opportunity to utilize those funds to pay for supportive services. And that would require an additional waiver, but is something that I'll be looking at and working with the hospital systems on, because again, it would save us money, and especially if the state wants to ask us to help support Medicaid cost sharing, then we'll be very interested in that. So I'm kind of in a layer. You have questions for me, but
I do. So thank you for that. So on the you said it was 53,000 cost per person per year, and a percentage of that is the county. Do you have a breakdown by chance on the percentage of county versus like the hospital costs or?
Yes, so that was in the original documentation that I believe Maureen sent to you after the tour that we did.
Like
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Okay. I think that we'll have more visibility into that once we have the real-time data this summer. I think we're going to see where those true breakouts are, because some of it was projections.
Great. And then the other question that I had when I toured the facility was, I'm all about evidence-based outcomes. And it's really difficult, I think, in this field to actually come with, out with qualitative outcomes. The qualitative are a little bit easier than the quantitative. So I think they're putting together a really good model, and I really look forward to seeing and tracking that to make sure that we're utilizing taxpayers' money wisely. And there is a cost-benefit analysis as we go through this.
Great. So I will move on to the next one. Just to frame this up a little bit, due to the vacancy rates in Ada County, really in the Treasure Valley, I don't think it's any surprise to anyone. We're now on year 5 of record low vacancy rates, hovering between 2 and 3%, whereas a more healthy vacancy rate would be around 6%. And practically speaking, what that means is that it is incredibly difficult for people to access housing. They're having to go to 5, 10, 15 apartment complexes to try and get in, pay their application fees, oftentimes with no result. We are subsequently also seeing a significant spike, and not just a spike, but an increasing trend in family homelessness. So what that means are a family, it could be a couple, it could be a mom with children who are experiencing homelessness. And one of the things that I am interested in exploring, and we have had this conversation, is what kind of appetite there is in the community to create some kind of consolidated effort to address this. Right now, there's a lot of disparate efforts, a lot of nonprofit over here, philanthropic partner over here, trying to sort of do their own thing. Over the last 2 years, I spent time working with the philanthropic community to educate them and advocate around what's going on around in this arena. There's a lot of will, but there's sort of a what's next moment. So to that end, and again, as it relates to Ada County, we pay for juvenile court, indigent, child protection in some cases, and certainly the jail at the end of the day. So what this proposal is just a placeholder at this time. I propose that during the course of this summer and the fall, we will conduct a leadership study to look at what kind of appetite there is, certainly within the philanthropic sector as well as other agencies, to create a consolidated campaign. And then I would ask that we come back before the board before actually voting to set aside this money. So I wouldn't ask my fellow board members to make a final decision during the budget deliberations, but to have a fully robust public hearing to discuss what are the outcomes of that feasibility leadership study. So that's what that is right now.
Commissioner Laciando?
Sure.
I'm interested, you've been involved in this for a long time. Have you discovered other communities that have done it well? I know we can point to a lot that have not, and it's been pretty disastrous, as you can see, and really sad what's happening. But I'm really interested in learning from other communities that have gotten a little bit ahead of the, I want to say ahead of the game, but ahead of the issues and the problems, and they've done a much better job. Can you point to any of those models?
So on family homelessness, we have not seen the kind of consolidated effort that we're proposing here. We actually think we're uniquely positioned to be one of the first in the country to tackle this in a more robust way. Where we have seen it is around chronic homelessness, which is what New Path is a step toward, and around veterans homelessness. There are several counties and cities across the United States who have effectively ended veterans homelessness. And when I say ended, that means someone might become homeless, but it's rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. So there's certainly a lot that we can learn from, but I will sort of step back from that and say, I think we get into some sort of dicey waters when we say which city is getting it right. There are cities that are getting it more right, but that turns a blind eye to the fact that this is a national issue that we're struggling with on a national front, both in terms of just the amount of housing that's being produced in the market is not keeping up with the population growth, number one. And number two, the cuts to HUD, systematic cuts to HUD, really since the early 90s, that have stymied resources for kids, families, individuals in those situations. At this point, the Housing Authority is only able to provide resources to a quarter of the folks who actually qualify for their services. So they'll open their waiting list for about a week, week and a half, and then have to close it for another year.
And I have one more question as we move into deliberations, and I know you said that this wouldn't be dealt with this year, but I'm really interested in also delineating out the roles and responsibilities between the cities and the county and what that would look like in terms of partnership.
Yeah, I think we'll have that opportunity again if this, I can't figure out what I'm calling it, leadership study, feasibility study, when it comes back, I think we'll have an opportunity to really lay that all out.
Thank you.
And I'll just,
Bill, back to
yeah,
you.
thank you. And I'll just add a few things. I'll note both of these issues, or both of these requests are really at the behest of the commission, right? It's this case, and specifically Commissioner Laciando brought up these two items, but even the prior funding for a new path was brought before the board. The reason it shows up here is because it's funded out of the Indigent Services Fund, right? And since our office oversees that fund, we provide that for them, but it's really something at the commission level. And then I'll also note, just to make sure it's for clarity purposes solely, that public-private partnership that you referred to, Commissioner Laciano, even if there was going to be public hearings and everything, we'd still have to budget the full amount, and it would be a part of our overall budget, right? So whatever money is used for that has to be set aside in the budget. That doesn't mean you have to expend it, right? This is distinguishing the budgeting item. But in order to be able to spend it, it has to be built in the budget. You can't do it later
Correct.
down the road.
I'm
which
just
is why it's coming up
proposing,
now.
I'd like to propose an additional layer of public transparency if we decide to do that.
Yep.
And then I guess I do have one more question. I keep saying that. One more question. So is this where this would live? In other words, is legal weighed in on this? Is this part of the indigent fund? How it would line up with what the mission is and the purpose for that fund?
Correct.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep, ready.
Board of Community Guardians. As mentioned, this is one of the new functions. This is where Marika is getting to learn what kind of money she has to work with. We transferred it to the general fund, so this is kind of like we're trying to figure out the right placement. Really, this belongs in the general fund because of the type of function that it is. Doesn't belong in the Indigent Services Fund. It will still be, the program will still be overseen by Katie and Indigent Services, so management different from funding source. We moved two positions. So we moved the position that originally existed, but then also we took one of the vacant positions at Indigent Services and combined that so that we can have now two positions. That's an upgrade for the program. We envisioned, when we hired Marika, having a program manager who can really focus on the program, the eligibility, everything, and then also having a program specialist who can try to bolster our volunteer program so that we can potentially take on more individuals through this. Talking with Judge Beater, there's absolutely a need, and we can only meet what we have the capacity for. It's been largely run by pure passion alone, and this is trying to break it up into a more sustainable model, both for the program but also for the people running it. Can certainly be a taxing role, and so we think we're going to implement new management in a way that we can manage this program better.
Phil, is the Board of Guardians, this piece under the Indigent Services budget? Or is this reflected?
Yeah, it's reflected in the auditor recorder elections. I know that sounds confusing, but it's where it is.
Madam Chair, Phil, Katie, Marika, I just want to extend my thanks again. I know, coming on board as a new board, and this is such a critical program for the community and kind of the situation that we were in terms of making sure we could not just adequately, but effectively provide this service. I really want to thank you for being a true county partner. You didn't have to take this on, Katie. I know there was some trepidation, and rightly so. But I want to thank you both so very much for stepping up and leading in this effort, because it's really critical for our community.
And I'll just add to this budget, we've budgeted $25,000 for a new car. They're currently using an old patrol vehicle, and we assessed
You could
it.
get somewhere faster if you put the lights on.
You could probably.
And I found him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, great. Success.
Nailed it.
All right, some additional budget considerations. These are more things that I just want to speak to briefly. These aren't things that you're going to find in my submitted budget, but they're just overarching things. This is one of those things, you don't necessarily have a platform. This is my opportunity to address some topics, I think, as you're preparing for your deliberations. So I just want to highlight a few of them. One is I want to acknowledge, I know that Human Resources, Cassie and Alex have been working really hard on developing a pay structure and something I had to implement. Everyone's kind of been going through their struggles to kind of narrow that down, but I definitely say from our position, we strongly support what they're doing. In terms of long-term planning and budgeting, this will be a great tool. It's one of the things that came out of the analysis done by the consultant that we hired for the payroll project, was the recommendation that we're big enough that we need to have better, cleaner lines in terms of both progression for employees as well as making sure we're paying people equitably all across the county and it's not one-offs in each situation. And hopefully this will provide some consistency. So I know where we are. We're not going to be able to integrate that into this year's budget, but hopefully by next year we'll be able to implement a program similar to almost to what the sheriff has with the pay plan, but where there's some predictability and structure for the county.
So Phil, are you saying these are not in,
These are not budgeted items. That's why I don't have dollar amounts with them.
Okay.
This is
and they're not in anyone else's budget?
in various forms. Call this commentary. You can cut me off at any point.
Okay.
Similarly, the master's facility plan, I know you guys have heard a lot about it, but a lot of work went in across the entire county to figure out what our space needs are and what the demands that we have. And I truly support what the priorities that the master's facility plan has set. And specifically, I think the top 3 should be an area of focus for the board. I know you have conversations about all of them, but they're kind of disparate. And I know at times that feels like you're being hit from multiple angles. I think it's safe to say all of us support what those priorities are, specifically the need for space at the jail, obviously with the issues they're facing with overcrowding, the need for administration space. As I mentioned, we're using closets in this building now as offices. It's becoming unsustainable. And the odds are the next time the legislature looks at issuing new judges, Ada County will still be towards the top of that list because of our case volume and the growth that we're experiencing in the area. And this will, more quickly than anyone anticipates, need to become just a courthouse. And the rest of us will need to move out. So I just want to express my support for all the work that Meg and Mitra and the entire team have done, along with all the other county partners, because I think that is a really good guiding document that when you look at any of those priorities, it really spells out what are our needs short-term as well as long-term. Now, the challenge is, as Commissioner Kendon has referenced last time, you have to figure out how to fund it, right? And I'm happy to be a close partner in figuring that out. I see it as a core function of our office. And in terms of our 2-year plans in our admin division, one of them is trying to help figure out the administration building because our office is feeling it so strongly and trying to address that. The other thing you guys had asked, I actually brought some old information. This is my past budget presentation.
But no bobbleheads. You bring us old information and no bobbleheads.
No bobbleheads, but you do get to see kind of what my budget presentations in the past have looked like. So this is an infographic I prepared for the FY18 budget. This was, again, additional considerations. One of the things that always comes up in the budget, it happens during deliberations, is what do you do about wages for county employees? Right? We've heard about either new personnel or some special salary adjustments, but what do you do across the board? One of the things I would like to advocate, particularly for my staff, clerks often aren't the highest earners in the county, right? As you can see from the stats, this information is from 2018. We've twice now done an extensive survey of our employees to look at the livability of the wages. And 20% of our staff earn less than a living wage when you consider their living conditions. That's not something I think the county is proud of. We start people in at $13 an hour and are asking a lot of them. Certainly we have very good benefits and it's what attracts a lot of our employees to the county. But I think we need to be doing all we can to take care of all of our employees. And one of the things I recommended, I'll always advocate to have some degree of merit so that we have the opportunity to provide incentives to our best employees. It's interesting, through the survey conducted as part of the best places to work, there was a really odd anomaly in the data that we got back from them. And that was, we had, if you're familiar with employee engagement, it's this idea you have people rowing with you, people sitting idle in the boat or rowing against you. Wages were one of the most significant concerns among the employees in the clerk's office, except for the least satisfied employees. The people rowing against us thought wages were fine. It didn't make much sense to me, but they were okay. And I think it shows is one of the things, sometimes it's the easy solution often is to give everyone the same increase, but that doesn't recognize our star performers. And we need to have ways that we can recognize peak performance in the office. We want to incentivize our best employees, and so we need means to do that. The other aspect that you see on the left of this graphic, again, this is from 2018, one thing I'd like to encourage is that we look at when we're distributing funds, not necessarily always using a percentage basis. The distinction is if we say a 3%, whether it's cost of living adjustment or merit, what that does is that 3% means a lot more to the highest earning employees than it does to the lowest earning employees. And if you see the data down there comparing raises, so between 2011 and 2017, the difference in raises between Ada County employees earning $100,000 a year and Ada County employees earning $29,000 a year was $15,000. So if you were at the top of the pay scale, you got $15,000 more than the people at the bottom of the pay scale just because of the method we use for distributing wages. Now, a major concern is always compression. Whenever we do these surges, so last year we gave a bump to the clerks in the clerk's office. What that does is it rises the lower wages, but it compresses them with the higher wages. If we look at doing a flat fee structure, so coming up with a set amount and basing it on that, where everyone's wages rise together, it avoids compression and also ensures that everybody in the county receives something rather than us doing it the one-offs that we've been doing historically. I just think it's an important consideration because we keep seeing this delta between the highest earners and the low earners. And as you certainly identify, Commissioner Laciando, I can say personally that $15,000 or $1,500 a year to some of my employees means a whole heck of a lot more than I would notice necessarily taking home the same amount. And so I want to do whatever I can to advocate for those folks. And then finally, you had mentioned it earlier, Commissioner Laciando, is alternative transportation. If we can do things to better incentivize, our office has had a lot of users of commuter ride in the past, but over time that just hasn't been relied on, and they have to pay to use commuter ride when right now we've been paying a ton to build parking garages. It would be great if the county just subsidized some of those alternative forms of transportation fully so that we can get more people out of this building and free up parking. I mean, Scott really highlighted it's one of the major issues we've been struggling with is parking issues. And I think there's some low-cost methods, or at least similar cost. When I created this before, it was $900 a month to provide a full van, dedicated commuter ride van to the county, and we were paying $900 a month for parking spaces that would cover the same number of people. And so it seems like a no-brainer to me. And then my last piece of wisdom is I don't know if you guys have discussed much or what your plans are for the deli space out front that has been sitting vacant since we had our last vendor. With the previous board, I had worked out quite a bit trying to look at that space, and my recommendation is that you make it a cafeteria space or break space for county employees. Again, that's one of the things this building really lacks, is space for people to meet, especially people to meet across departments so that people kind of commingle together. It's the least costly way to renovate that space because it is a exterior space with glass currently. If we just added a badge system so county employees could go in and take a break in that space, that was one of the spaces that was being considered both for a county gym as well as for expanding of the public defender's office previously. And it was our office that facilitated the expansion of both of those. We gave up the conference room area for the gym over at Indigent Services, as well as gave up a portion of our space in the courthouse to allow the growth of the public defender's office in hopes that we might be able to make room so that our employees could have space, as well as everybody else in the office, in the building. Because I think throughout this building, there's definitely a demand for people just to get away from their desk, eat, socialize, whatever. And as I'm sure I'm running longer than I ever anticipated, brief summary. One of the things unique, I covered a whole lot of information and a lot of expenses. At the end of the day, in terms of our allocations that we were given, we were able to fit almost everything into the allocations that we were initially given. The additional requests we have above and beyond our allocations, which is largely what you've heard from the other departments, is the $226,000 for the 4 new positions related to the judges. And then each of those extraordinary operating expense items, the payroll system, electronic poll books, and the historic record digitization. Those are our main requests above and beyond just the allocation we received at the beginning.
Okay, can you send me that summary please, electronically? Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Appreciate all that you've done to pull this together for us and your team sitting over there so patiently, and Kathleen for helping us.
We
through
appreciate
this.
your patience with us throughout this entire process.
Thank you. All right. Do we have time? We can get in?
I don't know. Can we get Avamore done, or what's your thought
We
here?
weren't even getting to discuss Avamore unless we
No,
wanted to
okay.
discuss it.
Okay.
Are you guys ready to do the Department of Administration, or,
Should we punt that to
Are you ready,
tomorrow?
Cassie?
We've got 15 minutes.
okay, Kathleen?
Okay.
Cassie supports brevity.
Okay.
Cassie, these people are not leaving because of you. I just want you to know that.
They're just amazing clerks. Thank you guys for being here to support me.
Okay, are we ready? Okay. Cassie Porter, Senior HR Manager, is representing the Department of Administration, General, the Veterans and Public Health Funds on behalf of you, the Commissioners, who are one of 7 constitutionally elected offices within Ada County. The Department of Administration is broken into 3 areas: community programs, commissioners, and administration. Community programs are programs that benefit Ada County as a whole, such as the Humane Shelter, senior contracts, U of I Extension, Family Advocates, Compass, and Allenbaugh House. The Commissioner's Office oversees the operation of 12 departments, acts as the Board of Equalization, provides oversight for the fair and emergency medical services, and adjudicates indigent claims. They serve on various other boards and committees, a few which include Compass, Valley Regional Transit Board, and the Catastrophic Health Care Program, COST program. Additionally, the commissioners are responsible for all county contracts, ordinances and resolutions, grant applications, and the overall direction of Ada County. The administration is comprised of the support for the commissioners, human resources, risk management, and procurement, all functions that support Ada County offices and departments. General covers costs associated with all offices and departments within the general fund, costs such as litigation attorney fees, postage, unemployment insurance, excise tax, and carries a contingency appropriation should the need arise. The county also budgets the funding for its capital projects in this department, in which once the new fiscal year has arrived, that funding is then provided to the Capital Projects Fund to fund the projects the board adopted during the budget process. The Veterans Fund assists in the maintenance, upkeep, and repair of servicemen memorials within Ada County. This funding is provided directly to the American Legion posts as requested and directed by Idaho Code 65-102 and 103. And the Public Health Fund provides the county's portion of funding for services provided on a regional basis by the state of Idaho. This funding is provided directly to the Central District Health as directed by Idaho Code 31862. And I will quickly go through these 4 budgets so Cassie can get to her presentation. In front of you is the Department of Administration, a department within the current expense fund. Budget submitted at $5,711,371, an increase of $555,690. Operating budget $2,645,774. Personnel budget $3,065,597. There are supplemental requests in this budget of $660,941. Below the changes in the supplemental requests for personnel and PBS, 2 new positions for an HR specialist and procurement officer, moving a commissioner's clerk from part-time to full-time, and 4 reclasses and 1 special salary adjustment. There are 5 supplemental requests in here entitled lobbying, and then number 2 is all your community programs, so Peer Wellness Center, Soil Conservation, Capital Crimes Defense, Family Advocate, BAEDC, BVIP, Disaster Services that we talked about a couple of days ago, Compass, Allenbaugh House, Valley Regional Transit, and then we have additional temp services. If the new position for procurement isn't approved, or we have FF&E for the new positions, and then a community support coordinator. General, moving on to general, they are a department within the current expense or general fund. Budget submitted at $2,870,517, a decrease of $4,353,760. Operating budget $2,320,517, personnel budget $550,000. This budget includes supplemental requests of $1,275,000. Below, you'll see the changes for this. Again, this is where all your capital projects are. That's why right now there's a big decrease. 2 supplementals on the operating side. Contingency, one supplemental on the personnel side, contingency for $100,000 over and above the 2% holdback, and then 2 supplementals on the operating side. Again, contingency in the operating budget and FSA Peak 1. Veterans is a special levy fund, part of the 3% cap, budgeted at $20,000, no change. And public health is another special levy fund, part of the 3% cap, budget requested $2,189,548, an increase of $63,773. This does include a supplemental request of $21,257. The supplemental request is for that additional ongoing costs. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Cassie Porter, who will give you more information on those budgets.
Come on up, Cassie. Thank you.
Good morning, or good afternoon. That's how long of a day it's been.
Good morning.
Sorry.
We might be here till morning.
No, it was
no.
8 minutes last time I timed it. That's how quick I can.
Let's
move.
do it.
I can set go.
So, thank you for this opportunity to present the Department of Administration's budget. Kathleen did a fantastic job summarizing it, but we've added graphics. So the Commissioner's Office and its administration division is part of the department. They are both the executive and the legislative duties for the county, oversee the budget, as well as manage 12 unruly directors in the departments. The community outreach includes support for community programs and outreach to the public regarding important issues and events. Human resources includes compensation and benefits, risk management, and all aspects of employee work cycle from hire to retire. And the procurement division oversees the county's purchasing to create a fair and competitive selection process while ensuring the county receives the most value for the tax dollars spent. I'm going to review the community programs first. Kathleen did do a great job, but we organized them in the requests. So the slide right now shows all the community partners that are requesting the same funding for FY20 as they received in FY19. That includes the Idaho Humane Society, the State Animal Damage Control, Lower Boise Watershed Council, the Treasure Valley Partnerships, Southwest Idaho Resource Conservation and Development Council, and then there is some money reserved for professional services. This additional funding is for unanticipated requests. There are 9 programs that are requesting increases for next fiscal year. The ACCEM Disaster Services is requesting an increase of $5,400. Ada Soil and Water Conservation Board is requesting an increase of $15,000. Allenbaugh House is requesting an increase of just over $9,000. Compass is requesting an increase of just over $7,000. The Capital Crimes Defense is an estimated increase at this time. We don't have exact numbers, so this is an estimated increase we anticipate. And then Family Advocates is requesting an additional $50,000. The Star Senior Center is requesting an additional $2,000. The University of Idaho Extension Office is requesting an additional $84,000. I would like to note as well that Expo Idaho also contributes $75,000 to the U of I extension that is not reflected here in this budget. Also, Valley Regional Transit is requesting an additional $3,000. There are also 3 new requests or requests that did not receive funding last year. Boise Valley Economic Development at $15,000, the Community Support at $50,000, and Peer Wellness Center at $50,000. In total, there's a request for just under $300,000 in additional funding, which would be a grand total of just under $2.2 million. Next, I'm going to go over the individual divisions requests for the supplemental. Administration is requesting that one of their part-time clerks with benefits be moved to a full-time position. This is a loaded cost total for $19,000. The commissioners are requesting 4 reclassifications. Again, these are all loaded costs. So there'd be an additional amount for a county administrator at $89,000, a senior project advisor at an additional $20,000, an asset manager at an additional $114,000, And the reason this is so high is the previous PCN that we reclassified did not have any funding associated to it last budget year. It was just a PCN. And then reclassifying the strategic development analyst for $7,000. These 4 reclassifications are to create an executive staff for the commissioner's office, similar to other counties in similar size to Ada County. There's also an additional request for professional services line item for a lobbyist at $35,000. As the clerk shared, the Board of Community Guardians has moved to the clerk's office, and so will no longer be reflected in the Department of Administration's budget. So that is a change for next year. Human Resources is requesting 1 new position. One of the core functions that HR is lacking is employee development. In FY18, Human Resources trained 300 new hires. We also implemented an HR Spotlight series, which directs training at managers and supervisors to help give them the tools that they need to be more successful in their work. For the past year, HR has been working to build the content for a supervisor academy that would assist in supervisors and giving them tools that they need. Currently, Ada County hires or promotes approximately 50 supervisors every year, and at this time, we are not giving them any additional training to help adjust to that new role. This position would fill that void, as well as to assist the HR division in building trainings on demand for offices and departments when they identify learning gaps in their work groups. This request is at a fully loaded cost of $85,000.
I just want to say I really appreciate you prioritizing this position. I think our employees are our most valuable assets, and to have internal professional development and training, I think will be really a benefit for everyone. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Procurement has also requested an additional position. The procurement division has seen an increase in utilization of their services in both volume and complexity of requests. The procurement division is requesting a new procurement officer at a fully loaded cost of just over $72,000. If this position is granted, we will need an additional $7,000 for equipment to support that position. There's also 2 special salary adjustments requested. This is for 2 employees that have obtained certification. And then quickly over the general fund, the substantial changes. The first one is the FSA supplemental. Human Resources did go out for an RFP for an FSA vendor this year. And during that process, we learned that the majority of the vendors out there do not support the current funding model that Ada County uses for our FSA program. And so in order for Ada County to move to the industry standard for the model of an FSA vendor, we would need a one-time pre-funded amount of $175,000 to move over to that new funding model. There's also a request to increase the operating contingency appropriation of $400,000 and $100,000 for personnel contingency. And then the final substantial change is unemployment insurance. In FY16, we moved from $200,000 for unemployment insurance down to $100,000 in insurance, and after reviewing the last few years, that is barely covering the cost of the claims, and this is in a very low unemployment timeframe. So we have moved over to a new premium allocation model, and so I shared that. The risk fund, I know a lot of departments and offices have received different amounts for what they were billed for their risk premium allocations. And so this is a general guideline of how we determine those premiums.
Cassie, can I back you up just for a second? I just want some clarification on, and I should know this because it's our budget. But just going back to the contingency appropriations operating, we had 600 in there, and we had a conversation, and we thought we needed to raise that to 400. And it made sense at the time. No, I'm trying to remember. Is that because of, for example, when the HVAC would go out in this building, it would come through our budget? Wouldn't that go through operations? But what actually comes through this budget that we would need to have this amount in there?
Madam Chair, you're exactly correct. So this contingency is for any general fund expense that would not be anticipated, your HVAC example. So operations would pay for it if they had anticipated, it's part of their regular budget, but
This is the, whoops.
when someone drives a car or tries to go through the front door and there's no money to pay for it, which someone did not too long ago, right? Then someone will come to you guys, and this is an amount that you guys can allocate. And we specifically put it with you so that it has that additional layer of oversight, and a department can't use it for a purpose you didn't intend them to.
Just want a clarification. Thank you.
course. So departments and offices did see different premiums amounts. 2 years ago, we moved the healthcare trust premium allocations to a forecasting model. It's been very successful, it's sustainable, it's very close in accuracy, so we have moved our risk premiums the same way. We have 5 different programs that go through the risk fund. And so what we've done is we first did a determined an income goal. We did this with a linear forecast over 5 years, and then we applied a 60% loss ratio across all 5. This is standard for the insurance industry. And then we split those total projected claims costs by office and department based on anticipated utilization. And so we've listed what that utilization would look like. The only one that does not get split is the unemployment insurance. We budget that completely in the general fund, and so that's why there is a significant increase in the general fund unemployment insurance line item. And last but not least, special levies. We will be out by 5:01. Veterans Department is at $20,000, holding steady, and the Public Health Department has an increase of just over $66,600 for a grand total of just under $2.2 million.
Madam Chair, just for transparency's sake for the general public, just so that they understand, we are statutorily required to be a part of the partnership that funds Central District Health, which does all kinds of wonderful things for our community. That board sets the budget for the year. We have representation on that board, but at the end of the day, we get told what amount we will be including in our budget.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right. I stand for any questions.
Okay. I think we're good. Thank you,
Excellent.
Cassie. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your work. Thank you so much, Phil. Yeah, very good.
Okay. And I have 5 o'clock on the dot, so.
That will wrap it up for today, and we will have a day off tomorrow, and we'll reconvene on Thursday to hear the very final budgets, as well as do kind of an overview of the master's facility plan, the CIP and EOE, and then kind of talk about next steps after that.
Sounds good. All right, we'll adjourn. Thank you, everyone.